What happens when a single gunshot changes 4 lives forever? When a minimum wage worker takes a bullet meant for a stranger's child, and that stranger happens to be a billionaire CEO? This is the story of Ethan Cole and Alexandra Hayes, two people from different worlds, brought together by violence, bound by gratitude, and united by love. Stay with me until the end, and comment what city you're watching from so I can see how far this story travels. Now, let me take you back to where it all began. The fluorescent lights of Miller's Market hummed their tired song at 10:47 p.m., casting everything in that peculiar shade of almost white that made fresh vegetables look sick and tired people look half dead. Ethan Cole was both, tired and half dead, at least on the inside. His hands moved on autopilot, stacking cans of tomato soup in perfect rows, the metallic clink, 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 a rhythm he knew better than his own heartbeat these days. 5 years. 5 years since cancer had stolen Rebecca from him, leaving behind a mortgage he couldn't afford, a 7-year-old son who still cried for his mother in the middle of the night, and a grief so heavy it had settled into his bones like concrete. Ethan had aged a decade in those 5 years. At 34, silver threads already wove through his dark hair, and lines creased the corners of his eyes, not from laughter, but from squinting through exhaustion, from holding back tears, from pretending everything was fine when Noah asked if they could afford pizza this week. "Price check on aisle 4, crackled the intercom, jarring him from his thoughts. Ethan glanced at his watch, an old Timex Rebecca had given him on their 5th anniversary, the leather band held together with duct tape. 43 minutes until closing. 43 minutes until he could collect Noah from Mrs. Patterson's apartment next door, where the elderly woman watched his son for free because she didn't mind the company, and because she knew, like everyone in their building knew, that Ethan Cole was drowning but too proud to ask for a life raft. He pushed his cart toward the stockroom, his sneakers, knockoffs he'd bought at a discount store, already splitting at the seams, squeaking against the linoleum. The store was nearly empty at this hour, just old Mr. Chen buying his nightly pint of mint chocolate chip ice cream, a young couple arguing quietly in the cereal aisle, and Ethan stopped, his breath caught. At the front of the store, near the automatic doors, stood a woman who didn't belong in Miller's Market. Everything about her screamed money, from her tailored black pantsuit that probably cost more than Ethan made in 3 months, to the Hermes bag dangling from her elbow, to the way she held her phone pressed to her ear with the casual authority of someone who expected the world to wait on her convenience. "I don't care what the Tokyo office says, Marcus," she snapped into the phone, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. "Tell them we're not moving the deadline. They knew the parameters when they signed the contract. If they can't deliver, we'll find someone who can." Alexandra Hayes. Ethan recognized her from the newspapers, the business magazines that cluttered the break room, left behind by employees who liked to dream about lives they'd never have. CEO of Hayes Industries, youngest woman to ever head a Fortune 500 company, worth somewhere in the billions. What the hell was she doing at Miller's Market at 11 o'clock on a Thursday night? Then he saw the little girl. She couldn't have been more than 6 or 7, with dark curls that cascaded down her back and a pink dress that looked like it had been designed for a princess. While her mother paced and barked orders into her phone, the child wandered away, drawn like a magnet toward the toy aisle, the pitiful little section where Miller's kept discount action figures and dusty board games that no one ever bought. Ethan smiled despite himself. Noah did the same thing every time Ethan brought him to the store, making a beeline for those sad toys like they were treasures. The memory tugged at something in his chest, not quite pain, not quite warmth, but something in between. He returned to his stocking, trying to ignore the growing unease in his gut. Something felt off tonight. The air in the store seemed thicker somehow, charged with electricity, like the moment before a thunderstorm breaks. The automatic doors whooshed open. 2 men entered. Ethan noticed them immediately, not because they looked particularly menacing at first glance, but because of how they moved. Purposeful. Alert. Scanning. Both wore hoodies despite the warm evening, their hands shoved deep in their pockets. One was tall and lanky, moving with a tweaker's jittery energy. The other was shorter, stockier, with a gym rat's build and a neck tattoo that snaked up from his collar. Ethan's heart began to pound. He'd grown up in a rough neighborhood before Rebecca, and her optimism had pulled him toward something better. He recognized predators when he saw them. The men split up. The tall one headed toward Mr. Chen and the couple in the cereal aisle. The stocky one moved toward the front registers. Time seemed to slow down, each second stretching like taffy. The stocky man reached the counter where Jenny Martinez, a 19-year-old college student working her way through community college, was counting her register, preparing for closing. He pulled his hand from his pocket. The gun looked enormous in the bright fluorescent light, almost cartoonish, like a prop from a movie. Except Ethan knew it was real from the way Jenny's face went white, from the small, choked sound that escaped her throat. "Everybody stay calm," the man shouted, his voice cracking with adrenaline or drugs or both. "Stay calm and nobody gets hurt. Open the registers now." The tall man had produced his own weapon, waving it between Mr. Chen and the young couple, who had frozen mid-argument, their faces masks of terror. "Phones on the ground," the tall one yelled. "All of you, phones down, hands up. Move and I'll blow your fucking heads off." The store erupted into chaos. The young woman began to cry. Mr. Chen's ice cream fell from his hands, splattering across the floor in a puddle of pale green. Jenny's hands shook so badly she could barely work the register. Alexandra Hayes finally looked up from her phone call. "What the?" she started to say. "You, lady, phone down, now." The stocky gunman swung his weapon toward her. Alexandra's eyes went wide. The phone slipped from her fingers, clattering to the floor. For the first time since walking into the store, she looked something other than powerful. She looked terrified. And in that moment of terror, she remembered. "Emma," she breathed. Ethan saw it happen in slow motion, saw the exact moment when Alexandra's carefully constructed world shattered. Her head whipped toward the toy aisle, her body already moving before her brain could catch up. "Emma! Emma!" The little girl emerged from behind a shelf, holding a battered stuffed animal, a teddy bear with one eye missing. She looked confused by her mother's tone, by the screaming, by the sudden wrongness that had infected the air. "Mommy?" The stocky gunman spun toward the sound. His eyes were wild, pupils blown wide. Definitely drugs, Ethan thought distantly. Definitely high on something that made triggers feel light and human lives feel cheap. "I said everybody stay still," the man screamed, advancing toward the toy aisle, toward Emma. Alexandra ran. Whatever else she was, cold, driven, absent, she was still a mother. She ran toward her daughter with the desperate speed of someone trying to outrun a nightmare. But the gunman was closer. Emma started to cry, huge tears rolling down her cheeks, the stuffed bear falling from her hands. She didn't understand what was happening, didn't understand why the man with the gun was pointing it at her, didn't understand why her mother was screaming. "Don't move!" the gunman shrieked, and Ethan could hear the panic in his voice, the way fear and drugs and desperation were mixing into something lethal. "Don't fucking move or I'll—" Ethan didn't think. Thinking was for people who had time, who had options, who had something to lose. Ethan Cole had already lost everything that mattered 5 years ago. The only thing he had left was Noah, and Noah would understand. Somehow, if the worst happened, Noah would understand that his father had done the right thing. Because that little girl, that terrified, crying little girl, she was somebody's whole world, just like Noah was his. His cart crashed to the side. Cans of soup exploded across the floor, rolling in every direction. Ethan's legs pumped, his old sneakers finding purchase on the linoleum, launching him forward with every ounce of strength he had left. He heard Alexandra scream, a sound of pure anguish that would haunt him later. He heard the gunman shout something, words that dissolved into meaningless noise. He heard his own heartbeat, thundering in his ears like a war drum. 3 steps. 2 steps. 1 step. Emma looked up at him with eyes as wide as the ocean, and in that split second, Ethan saw Noah. Saw every child who deserved to grow up, to have birthdays and scraped knees and first days of school and first loves and all the beautiful, terrible, magnificent things that made life worth living. He threw himself in front of her. The gun went off. The sound was impossibly loud, a thunderclap in the confined space of the store. People screamed. Something shattered, glass or pottery, or maybe just the illusion that bad things only happen to other people in other places. Ethan felt the impact before he felt the pain, a massive force that punched into his chest and spun him sideways, his body a shield between the bullet and the child. He had a moment, one crystal-clear moment, to feel a surge of triumph. She's safe. The little girl is safe. Then the pain arrived, and it was unlike anything he'd ever experienced. Not sharp, not burning. Those would come later. This was a vast, crushing pressure, as if someone had reached into his chest and wrapped a fist around his heart. He hit the ground hard, his head cracking against the tile. The fluorescent lights above him swam in and out of focus, turning into comets with long, streaming tails. Sounds became muffled, as if someone had stuffed cotton in his ears. Distantly, he heard more shouting, more screams, the sound of running feet, the robbers fleeing, their plan gone catastrophically wrong. Someone was crying. No, multiple people were crying. And then there was a face above him. Alexandra Hayes, the billionaire CEO, her perfect makeup streaked with tears, her hands pressing against his chest, pressing where the blood was flowing, hot and dark and far too much of it. No, 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 she was chanting, the words tumbling over each other. Stay with me. Oh God, please stay with me. Someone call 911. Call 911. Ethan tried to speak, but his lungs wouldn't cooperate. Bubbles formed at his lips, never a good sign, some distant part of his brain noted clinically. Punctured lung. Maybe worse. Don't talk, kick out, Alexandra commanded, her voice breaking. Don't you dare talk, help is coming. You're going to be fine, you have to be fine. Another face appeared, smaller, younger. Emma. Her dark eyes were huge in her pale face, her pink dress splattered with his blood. Is he dead? The little girl whispered. No! Alexandra pulled her daughter close with one arm, while keeping pressure on Ethan's chest with the other. No, baby, he's not dead. He's going to be okay. He saved you. This man saved you. Ethan wanted to tell them it was okay. Wanted to tell Alexandra to call Mrs. Patterson, to make sure Noah didn't wake up alone, to explain to his son that Daddy had to leave, but it wasn't his fault. It was never his fault. He wanted to tell Emma that she was worth it, that she should grow up big and strong and brave, that she should never let anyone make her feel small. But the words wouldn't come, only blood, trickling from the corner of his mouth. What's your name? Alexandra was asking, her voice desperate, her hands slippery with his blood. Please, tell me your name. He managed to form one word, pushing it out with the last of his strength. Noah. Alexandra's face crumpled. Noah. Okay, Noah. I've got you, Noah. I've got you. He wanted to correct her. Noah was his son, not him. But the darkness was creeping in at the edges of his vision, narrowing the world to a tunnel, and at the end of that tunnel was Rebecca, looking exactly like she had the day before the cancer took her, healthy and whole and smiling. Not yet, he thought. Noah needs me. I can't leave Noah. But the darkness didn't care about Noah or Rebecca or the little girl he'd saved or the CEO crying over him. The darkness only cared about claiming what it was owed. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer, but not close enough, never close enough. The last thing Ethan Cole heard before the world went black was a child's voice, not Emma's, but a memory of Noah's, asking a question he had asked every night since his mother died. Daddy, will you always come back? And for the first time in 5 years, Ethan Cole wasn't sure he could promise yes. The ambulance screamed through the streets of Chicago, its lights painting the night in shades of red and blue. Inside, paramedics worked with controlled urgency over Ethan's body, their hands flying through practiced motions, IV lines, oxygen mask, pressure bandages that bloomed red almost as soon as they were applied. BP dropping, 80/40. Tension pneumothorax, left side. I need a needle decompression, now. Sir, can you hear me? Sir? But Ethan couldn't hear them. He was somewhere else, somewhere deeper, where the pain couldn't reach and the fear couldn't follow. In the back of the ambulance, squashed against the wall to stay out of the way, Alexandra Hayes held her daughter and watched a stranger die for them. She'd made split-second decisions that moved millions of dollars, hired and fired hundreds of people, built an empire from nothing but ambition and brilliance. She was a woman who controlled everything in her orbit. But she couldn't control this. She couldn't control the way the paramedic's face went grim when the blood pressure dropped further. Couldn't control the way her daughter's small body shook with sobs. Couldn't control the crushing guilt that made it hard to breathe, harder than it should be for someone whose chest wasn't filled with blood. "He pushed me," Emma whispered against her mother's shoulder. "The man pushed me, Mommy. He pushed me, and then the loud noise happened, and now he's bleeding. Why is he bleeding so much?" Alexandra had no answer. She'd spent her entire adult life having answers, for investors, for board members, for journalists who tried to catch her off guard. But she had no answer for her 6-year-old daughter about why good people bled out on ambulance gurneys while saving children they didn't know. Her phone, retrieved from the store floor by a shell-shocked Jenny Martinez, buzzed incessantly in her pocket. Tokyo office. Marcus. The board. All of them could burn. All of them could wait. For the first time in her career, Alexandra Hayes didn't give a damn about Hayes Industries or quarterly earnings or market share. All she cared about was the man on the gurney, his chest barely rising, his lips turning blue despite the oxygen mask. "What's his name?" she asked suddenly, grabbing the nearest paramedic's arm. "Please, someone must know his name." The paramedic, a woman in her 40s with kind eyes and stress-gray hair, glanced at the wallet they'd pulled from his pocket. "ID says Ethan Cole, age 34, organ donor card, a photo of a kid." "Oh, God," Alexandra breathed. "He has a child." The paramedic's eyes met hers, and in that look was a shared understanding of the tragedy about to unfold. Somewhere in this city, a child was sleeping peacefully, unaware that his father might not come home. "We're doing everything we can," the paramedic said softly before turning back to her patient. But Alexandra heard the unspoken addition, "It might not be enough." The emergency room at Northwestern Memorial Hospital exploded into controlled chaos. When the ambulance doors opened, doctors and nurses swarmed, a well-oiled machine designed to fight death. They wheeled Ethan away at a run, through double doors that swung shut with a finality that made Alexandra's stomach drop. She stood in the hallway, still covered in his blood, her daughter clinging to her like a barnacle. Around them, the ER hummed with the sounds of suffering, moaning, crying, machines beeping urgent warnings. The smell of antiseptic and blood and fear hung thick in the air. "Ma'am?" A nurse approached, clipboard in hand. "Are you injured? Do you need to be examined?" Alexandra looked down at herself as if seeing her body for the first time. Blood, Ethan's blood, had soaked through her silk blouse, stained her pants, dried under her fingernails. But it wasn't hers. None of the blood was hers. That was the problem, wasn't it? None of the blood was hers. "No," she said, her voice hollow. "No, I'm not hurt." The nurse's expression softened. "Are you family to Mr. Cole?" Family. The word echoed in her head. An hour ago she hadn't known Ethan Cole existed. Now she was wearing his blood like a second skin while he fought for his life behind those closed doors. "No," she admitted. "But he saved my daughter. He saved Emma." The nurse nodded, unsurprised. She'd probably seen this before, the aftermath of random violence, the collateral damage of other people's choices. "There's a family waiting room down the hall, third door on your right. Someone will update you when there's news." When? Not if. As if news was guaranteed to be forthcoming, as if Ethan Cole was guaranteed to survive surgery. But Alexandra knew better. She'd built her fortune on reading between the lines, on hearing what people didn't say. The nurse's careful neutrality spoke volumes. The waiting room was painted in soothing blues and greens with magazines nobody read, and a television nobody watched, and a coffee maker that produced something vaguely resembling coffee. Alexandra sat in an uncomfortable plastic chair and held her daughter while the minutes dripped by like honey, slow and sticky and suffocating. Emma had finally stopped crying, her sobs giving way to an exhausted silence. She'd retreated somewhere inside herself, to a place where mothers couldn't reach, where trauma planted its seeds for future nightmares. Alexandra stroked her daughter's hair and stared at the clock on the wall. 11:37 p.m., 47 minutes since the shooting. It felt like a lifetime. It felt like no time at all. Her phone buzzed again. Marcus calling for the 14th time. She should answer. Should tell her assistant to reschedule tomorrow's meetings, to handle the Tokyo crisis, to keep the machine running while she dealt with this unexpected detour in her perfectly planned life. But she couldn't make herself care. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Ethan Cole throwing himself in front of Emma, saw the gunman's finger tighten on the trigger, saw the blood bloom across his chest like a dark flower. He hadn't hesitated. Not for a second. While Alexandra had been frozen, calculating odds and possibilities, this grocery store clerk had simply acted. No cost-benefit analysis, no risk assessment, no thought for his own survival. He'd just moved, driven by something Alexandra had forgotten existed, the simple, uncomplicated instinct to protect the vulnerable. She'd been so busy protecting her market share that she'd forgotten how to protect anything real. The double doors burst open. A doctor emerged, young, Asian, female, with blood on her scrubs and exhaustion carved into her face. Her eyes scanned the waiting room, landing on Alexandra. Family of Ethan Cole? Alexandra stood so quickly she almost dumped Emma onto the floor. Yes. No. I'm here about Ethan Cole. Is he... He's alive, the doctor said, and Alexandra's knees nearly buckled with relief. But it was close. The bullet missed his heart by less than an inch. It punctured his left lung, nicked a rib, and caused significant internal bleeding. We've stabilized him for now, but the next 48 hours are critical. If he develops an infection or complications... But he's alive, Alexandra interrupted. He's going to live. The doctor's expression was carefully neutral, the same professional mask the nurse had worn. He's alive right now. Whether he stays that way depends on a lot of factors. His body, his will to fight, luck. I've seen people survive worse. I've seen people die from less. Can I see him? Not yet. He's in recovery. Besides, I understood you weren't family. Alexandra opened her mouth to argue, then closed it. What could she say? That she felt responsible? That she needed to see him breathing to believe it was real? That her daughter was in shock and might need to see the man who saved her alive and whole? He saved my daughter's life, she said instead. He took a bullet meant for her. I need to know he's okay. I need to tell him... Her voice broke. I need to tell him thank you. The doctor's expression softened slightly. I understand, but right now, what Mr. Cole needs is rest and stabilization. Come back tomorrow afternoon. If he's strong enough, you can see him then. In the meantime, there are some questions that need answering. Does Mr. Cole have any family we should contact? The police found a photo of a young boy in his wallet. Oh God, the child. In the chaos and fear, Alexandra had almost forgotten. I don't know, she admitted. I don't know anything about him. We were in the same place at the same time, and She couldn't finish the sentence. The police are working on contacting next of kin, the doctor said. They'll want to speak with you as well about what happened. Of course, whatever they need. The doctor nodded and turned to leave, then paused. What he did, throwing himself in front of your daughter, that took guts. Real guts. We'll do everything we can to make sure his courage wasn't wasted. After the doctor left, Alexandra sank back into her chair, feeling hollowed out, scraped raw. Emma had fallen asleep against her shoulder, her small face peaceful in a way it hadn't been while awake. Children were like that, able to compartmentalize, to retreat into sleep when the waking world became too terrible to bear. Alexandra envied her. She knew she wouldn't sleep tonight. Every time she closed her eyes, she'd see Ethan Cole falling, bleeding, dying for a child he didn't know. For Emma. Her Emma, who she'd been ignoring while barking orders into a phone about deadlines and contracts and all the things that seemed so monumentally important until a bullet put them into perspective. How many bedtimes had she missed? How many school plays and parent-teacher conferences had she delegated to nannies and assistants? How many times had Emma asked for a story or a hug or just 5 minutes of attention, only to be told, "Mommy's working, sweetie"? Too many. Far too many. And now a stranger, a man who stocked shelves for minimum wage and probably worried about making rent, had valued Emma's life more than Alexandra ever had. He'd been willing to die for her, had nearly died for her. While Alexandra had been more concerned with the Tokyo office than with the fact that her 6-year-old daughter was wandering around a grocery store unsupervised at nearly 11 o'clock at night. What kind of mother did that? What kind of person? The kind who was about to change, she decided. Whatever happened next, Whether Ethan Cole lived or died, whether her company thrived or crashed, whether the board approved or mutinied, Alexandra Hayes was done being the kind of woman who put profits before people, starting with the person who mattered most, her daughter, and the man who'd saved her. At 2:17 a.m., while Alexandra dozed fitfully in the waiting room chair, a taxi pulled up to Northwestern Memorial Hospital. Out stepped a boy of about 7, sandy-haired, freckled, wearing Superman pajamas and a jacket thrown hastily over them. Beside him was an elderly woman with silver hair and kind eyes, her hand firmly grasping his as they hurried toward the emergency entrance. The boy's name was Noah Cole, and he'd been woken from sleep by police officers with terrible news. His father had been shot. His father might die. His father was in surgery, and Noah needed to come to the hospital right away. Mrs. Patterson, the neighbor, had dressed him in a daze, her own hand shaking as she zipped his jacket and called for a cab. She'd known Ethan since he moved into the building 5 years ago, had watched him struggle and scrape and somehow keep going even when any sensible person would have given up. "Is my dad going to die?" Noah had asked in the cab, his voice very small and very calm, too calm for a 7-year-old. "No, sweetheart," Mrs. Patterson had lied because sometimes lies were kinder than truth. "Your dad is tough. He's going to be just fine." But now, walking through the antiseptic halls of the hospital, she wasn't so sure. The nurses' faces were too carefully neutral when she asked about Ethan Cole's condition. The waiting room they were directed to had that particular quality of sorrow that spaces acquire when they've witnessed too much grief. And then Noah saw her, the woman in the blood-stained suit holding a sleeping child, the woman who looked like she'd walked through hell and barely made it out the other side. Something in his young, intuitive mind understood immediately that this woman was connected to his father's shooting. "Did you hurt my dad?" he asked, his voice steady despite the tears starting to track down his cheeks. Alexandra's eyes flew open. She took in the boy, the same sandy hair she'd seen in the photo the paramedic mentioned, the same determined set to his jaw she'd glimpsed in Ethan's face before he fell, and felt something crack in her chest. This was Ethan Cole's son. This was the child who might lose his father tonight because of her, because she'd been too busy with work to watch her own daughter, because a random act of violence had required a hero and Ethan Cole had answered the call. "No," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "No, sweetheart. I didn't hurt your dad. Your dad saved my daughter. He's a hero." "I don't want him to be a hero," Noah said, and now the tears were coming faster, his composure crumbling. "I want him to come home. I want my dad." Mrs. Patterson pulled the boy close, murmuring comfort, but her eyes met Alexandra's over his head. In that look was a question, an accusation. Was it worth it? Was your daughter's life worth his? Alexandra wanted to say yes, wanted to argue that all lives had equal value, that Emma deserved to live just as much as anyone else. But looking at Noah, this child who'd already lost his mother, who might now lose his father, she couldn't make the words come. Instead, she gently disentangled herself from Emma, laying her daughter across 2 chairs, and moved to sit beside Noah and Mrs. Patterson. "Your father is the bravest man I've ever met," she said softly. "And he's strong. The doctors say he's going to fight. He's going to fight because he has you to come home to. Do you understand?" Noah nodded, swiping at his tears with the back of his hand. "He promised he'd always come back. After Mom died, he promised he'd never leave me. He has to keep his promise." "He will," Alexandra said, and she poured every ounce of conviction she possessed into those 2 words. "He will, Noah. I promise you." It was a foolish promise, made in the heat of emotion, with no way to guarantee its truth. But Alexandra Hayes had built her empire on believing she could make the impossible happen through sheer force of will. If Ethan Cole needed someone to will him back to life, she would do it. She would move heaven and earth if necessary. She owed him that much. They owed him everything. As the night stretched toward dawn, as the lights of Chicago glittered beyond the hospital windows, as machines in a room somewhere above them breathed for Ethan Cole and monitored his heartbeat and pumped antibiotics into his veins, 3 people sat in a waiting room and hoped. A boy who'd already lost one parent. an elderly neighbor who'd become family through proximity and love, and a CEO who'd forgotten what it meant to be human until a grocery store clerk reminded her with a single, selfless act. 3 people, bound together by violence and valor, waiting to see if grace would grant them a miracle, waiting to see if heroes got to go home. The first rays of dawn crept through the hospital windows like timid visitors, uncertain of their welcome. Alexandra hadn't moved from her chair in the waiting room, her body stiff and aching, her designer suit stiff with dried blood that had turned from red to rust brown in the hours since the shooting. Beside her, Noah had finally succumbed to exhaustion around 4 in the morning, his small body curled against Mrs. Patterson, who kept one protective arm around him even in sleep. Emma stirred on her makeshift bed of chairs, whimpering softly. Alexandra reached out instinctively, stroking her daughter's hair until she settled. The simple gesture felt foreign, unpracticed. How long had it been since she'd comforted her own child? How many nannies had performed this exact motion while Alexandra sat in late-night conference calls or reviewed quarterly projections? "You should take your daughter home," Mrs. Patterson said quietly, her voice rough with sleeplessness. She'd been awake the entire night, keeping vigil. "Get her cleaned up, fed. This is no place for a child." Alexandra looked down at Emma, at the dried blood, Ethan's blood, that flecked her daughter's pink dress like some macabre abstract painting. "I can't leave, not until I know he's not your responsibility," Mrs. Patterson interrupted, not unkindly, but with the blunt honesty of someone too tired for diplomacy. "You don't know us. You don't know Ethan. You can write a check, send flowers, move on with your life. That's what people like you do, isn't it?" The words stung because they were true. Or at least, they would have been true 48 hours ago. People like Alexandra Hayes didn't get involved. They made donations to charity galas, hired PR firms to manage their public image, and returned to their insulated worlds where blood stayed safely inside bodies and heroes were something you read about in newspapers. But something had shifted last night. When Ethan Cole threw himself in front of that bullet, he'd shattered more than just his own body. He'd shattered the careful walls Alexandra had built between herself and the messy, dangerous, beautiful reality of human connection. "You're right," Alexandra said softly. "I don't know you. I don't know Ethan. But he bled for my daughter. He might die for her. That makes it my responsibility. That makes him my responsibility." Mrs. Patterson studied her for a long moment, and Alexandra saw the assessment happening behind those tired eyes, the weighing of sincerity against skepticism, of promises against past experience. Finally, the older woman nodded slowly. "All right then. But that boy needs breakfast when he wakes up, and you need to look after your own. There's a cafeteria on the 2nd floor. Take Emma, get some food, get cleaned up. I'll stay with Noah. If the doctors come with news, I'll make sure you're called." It was a test, Alexandra realized. Mrs. Patterson was offering her an out, a chance to fulfill the minimum obligation and then slip away. Most people would take it. Most people would grab the lifeline gratefully. Alexandra Hayes had not become a billionaire by being most people. "I'll bring food back for all of us," she said, carefully extracting herself from the chair without waking Emma. "And coffee. Real coffee, not whatever poison they're serving in the vending machines." The ghost of a smile touched Mrs. Patterson's weathered face. "Extra cream, 2 sugars, and maybe some hot chocolate for the kids. They'll need something sweet when they wake up to all this." Alexandra carried Emma through the hospital corridors, her daughter's weight slight but somehow grounding against her chest. Emma stirred, blinking up at her mother with confusion. "Mommy, where are we?" "Hospital, sweetheart. Do you remember what happened?" Emma's face crumpled, and Alexandra cursed herself for asking. Of course she remembered. Children didn't forget trauma just because they slept through a few hours of it. "The man with the gun," Emma whispered. "And the other man, the one who pushed me. Is he dead?" "No, baby. No, he's not dead. He's hurt, but the doctors are taking care of him." "It's my fault," Emma said, her voice so small it barely qualified as sound. "If I hadn't gone to look at toys, if I had stayed with you—" "Stop!" Alexandra set her daughter down, kneeling so they were eye to eye, not caring that her knees pressed against the cold hospital floor. "Emma Hayes, you listen to me. None of this is your fault. Not one single bit of it. You're 6 years old. You're supposed to look at toys. You're supposed to wander and explore and be a child. The only people at fault are the men with guns, do you understand? Emma nodded, but Alexandra could see the guilt still swimming in those dark eyes, could see how it was already taking root. Trauma was like that. It planted seeds that grew into thorny vines, wrapping around the heart and squeezing until breathing hurt. She should know. She'd been carrying her own thorny vines for years, ever since her own father had died and left her his failing company and a note that said simply, "Make me proud." She'd spent 20 years trying to honor that command, sacrificing everything, her marriage, her youth, her relationship with her daughter, on the altar of success. And for what? So she could stand in a hospital, covered in a stranger's blood, realizing too late that pride was a poor substitute for presence? "Come on," she said, standing and taking Emma's hand. "Let's get you cleaned up." The women's restroom on the second floor was mercifully empty. Alexandra wet paper towels and gently wiped the blood from Emma's face and hands, watching the water in the sink turn pink, then red, then pink again as she rinsed and repeated. Emma stood silent through the process, docile in a way that worried Alexandra more than tears would have. "Can I ask you something, Mommy?" "Anything, sweetheart." "Why did that man save me? He didn't even know me." Alexandra paused, the damp paper towels suspended between them. It was such a simple question, really, the kind of question that should have a simple answer. But nothing about last night had been simple. "Because you matter," she said finally. "Because all children matter. Because some people, good people, they see someone in danger and they don't think about themselves. They just act." "Like superheroes?" "Yes," Alexandra agreed, surprised by the tightness in her throat. "Exactly like superheroes, except better because he's real." She looked at herself in the mirror, really looked, for the first time in hours. Her reflection shocked her. The perfectly coiffed Alexandra Hayes, the woman whose image graced the covers of Forbes and Fortune, was gone. In her place was someone Alexandra barely recognized, hair matted, makeup smeared, expensive suit ruined, eyes hollow with shock and exhaustion. But beneath the wreckage, there was something else, something she hadn't seen in her own reflection in years. She looked human. She looked like she'd survived something that mattered. The cafeteria was just beginning to serve breakfast when they arrived. Industrial scrambled eggs, toast that tasted like cardboard, coffee that was only slightly better than the vending machine variety. Alexandra ordered enough for an army, adding hot chocolate, fresh fruit, and every pastry that looked remotely edible. The cashier, a middle-aged black woman with kind eyes and a name tag that read Lorraine, rang up the order, her gaze lingering on Alexandra's blood-stained clothes. "You okay, honey?" she asked softly. The question, so simple and genuine, nearly undid Alexandra completely. No one had asked her that last night. The nurses and doctors had been concerned about Emma, about Ethan, but no one had thought to check on the woman in the waiting room who wasn't bleeding, but might as well have been. "I don't know," Alexandra admitted, and the honesty felt like pulling splinters from her heart. "Someone saved my daughter's life last night, took a bullet for her. And I don't know if he's going to survive. And I don't know why I'm still here except that I can't leave. And Her voice broke. "I don't know." Lorraine reached across the counter and squeezed Alexandra's hand, heedless of the blood still crusting under her fingernails. "Then you stay until you do know. You stay as long as you need to. And you eat something, because collapsing won't help anybody." It was the kindness that did it, the unexpected, unearned kindness from a stranger who had no reason to care about a CEO's crisis of conscience. Alexandra felt tears spill down her cheeks, hot and fast, and utterly beyond her control. "I'm sorry," she gasped. "I'm sorry. I don't usually—" "Honey, if you weren't crying right now, I'd be worried about you. Cry all you need. That's what tears are for. Washing away what words can't fix." Emma tugged at her mother's sleeve. "Mommy?" Alexandra wiped her eyes roughly, trying to compose herself. "I'm okay, sweetheart. Mommy's okay." But as they loaded the cafeteria tray and headed back toward the waiting room, Alexandra wondered if that was true. She'd spent so many years being okay, being strong, being in control, being the woman who never cried, never faltered, never let anyone see her bleed, that she'd forgotten how to be anything else. Maybe it was time to learn. When they returned to the waiting room, Noah was awake, sitting rigid in his chair with Mrs. Patterson's arm around his shoulders. His eyes were red-rimmed but dry, his small jaw set with a determination that looked far too old for his 7-year-old face. "Any news?" Alexandra asked, even though she knew from their expressions there wasn't. Mrs. Patterson shook her head. "Nothing yet. But I spoke with a nurse. She said the surgery went well and he made it through the night. That's good. That's very good." Alexandra distributed the food, watching as Noah mechanically ate his scrambled eggs without seeming to taste them. Emma picked at a muffin, tearing it into smaller and smaller pieces without actually putting any in her mouth. Only Mrs. Patterson ate with any real appetite, the practical eating of someone who understood that survival required fuel. "Noah," Alexandra said carefully, setting down her untouched coffee, "I know this is hard. I know you must be scared, but I want you to know I'm going to make sure your dad gets the best care possible. Whatever he needs, whatever you need." "We don't need your money," Noah interrupted, his voice flat. "We need my dad." The words landed like a slap, all the more effective for their simplicity. Mrs. Patterson started to admonish him, but Alexandra held up a hand. "You're right," she said. "You're absolutely right. And I can't give you that. I can't make your dad better by throwing money at the problem. But I can make sure the best doctors are looking at his case. I can make sure you don't have to worry about hospital bills or missing work or any of the 1,000 other things that shouldn't matter but do. Will you let me do that much?" Noah studied her with eyes that had learned suspicion the hard way. "Why? Why do you care? We're nobody to you." "Because your father saved my daughter," Alexandra said simply. "And because—" She paused, searching for words that would make sense to a 7-year-old boy. "Because sometimes the universe puts people in our path for a reason. Maybe I'm supposed to help you. Maybe that's my part in all this." "Do you believe in God?" Noah asked suddenly. The question caught Alexandra off guard. She'd been raised nominally Christian, attended the occasional charity event at churches. But actual belief? Faith? Those had seemed like luxuries for people who had time for such things. "I don't know," she admitted. "Do you?" "My mom did. She said God had a plan for everyone. That even the bad things happen for a reason." Noah's voice wavered. "But I don't see what reason there is for my dad getting shot. What's the plan in that?" Alexandra had no answer. She'd spent her life believing in spreadsheets and strategy, in quarterly projections and 5-year plans. The idea that some divine being was orchestrating events, moving them around like pieces on a chessboard, it seemed absurd, and yet, what were the odds? What were the mathematical chances that she, a woman who shopped at boutiques in Manhattan and Milan, would be in Miller's Market at the exact moment 2 gunmen decided to rob it? That Ethan Cole would be working that particular shift? That Emma would wander toward the toy aisle at that exact second? Coincidence seemed almost as improbable as divine intervention. "I don't know if there's a plan," Alexandra said carefully, "but I know your father is a good man. And I know good men deserve good things. So maybe we make our own plan. We decide that he's going to survive, that you're going to be okay, that something good can come from something terrible." Emma, who'd been silently watching the exchange, suddenly spoke up. "I want to give him my bear." Alexandra blinked. "What?" "My bear, Mr. Snuffles. He makes me feel better when I'm sad. Maybe he'll make the man feel better too." "The man has a name," Noah said sharply. "His name is Ethan Cole. And he's my dad." "I know," Emma said, her voice very small. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean... I just want to help." The tension in Noah's shoulders eased slightly. He was angry, scared and angry, and lashing out because he was 7 years old and terrified. But he wasn't cruel. "That's nice," he mumbled. "About the bear, I mean. But he'd probably rather have you not need saving in the first place." It was a child's brutal honesty, the kind that cut straight to the heart of things. Emma's face crumpled, and Alexandra felt her own anger flare, protective and maternal and entirely irrational. Noah was grieving, she reminded herself. He was terrified. He was allowed to be unfair, but before she could formulate a response, Mrs. Patterson intervened. Noah James Cole. That was unkind. This little girl didn't ask for any of this to happen. She's as much a victim as your father. But Dad wouldn't be hurt if two criminals hadn't walked into a store with guns, Mrs. Patterson said firmly. That's where the blame lies, not with a 6-year-old child. Noah's face flushed, shame mixing with fear. I'm sorry, he whispered to Emma. I didn't mean it. I'm just scared, Emma finished. Me too. I'm scared too. And just like that, with the simple acknowledgement of shared fear, the tension broke. Two children thrown together by violence, recognizing their common ground. Alexandra watched them and felt something shift in her chest. Not quite hope, but perhaps its distant cousin. Maybe this disaster, this terrible random act of violence, could forge something stronger than what it broke. Maybe Noah and Emma could find friendship in trauma. Maybe Alexandra could find redemption. Maybe Ethan Cole could find a reason to fight. At 9:47 a.m., just as Alexandra was seriously contemplating storming the ICU and demanding answers, Dr. Sarah Chen appeared in the doorway of the waiting room. She looked marginally better than she had at 3 in the morning. Her scrubs were fresh, at least, but the exhaustion was still evident in the set of her shoulders. Noah Cole? She asked, her eyes scanning the room and landing on the boy. Noah shot to his feet, hope and terror warring on his face. That's me. Is my dad? He's awake, Dr. Chen said, and the relief that flooded the room was almost palpable. Just barely, and he's on a lot of pain medication, but he's conscious and asking for you. Noah's face transformed, years of worry sloughing off in an instant. Can I see him? Please, can I see him? That's why I'm here, but I need to prepare you first. He doesn't look good. There are a lot of tubes and machines, and he's very weak. Are you ready for that? I don't care what he looks like, Noah said fiercely. I just need to see him. Dr. Chen smiled, the first real smile Alexandra had seen from her. Okay then, Mrs. Patterson, you can come too. Family only in the ICU. Wait, Alexandra said, standing abruptly. Would it be possible for me to see him just for a moment? Dr. Chen's expression turned regretful. I'm sorry, but like I said, family only, hospital policy. But Alexandra stopped, suddenly aware of how absurd her claim sounded. What was she exactly? Not family, not friend, just a stranger whose daughter owed this man her life. Noah surprised her. She can come, he said, looking at Alexandra with an expression she couldn't quite read. She's part of this too. Dad would want to see her, to know Emma's okay. I really shouldn't, Dr. Chen hedged, but Alexandra saw the softening in her eyes. But given the circumstances, 5 minutes, that's all. And you'll need to follow ICU protocols. Wash hands, no touching unless I say so. They moved through the hospital as a strange little procession. A doctor, an elderly neighbor, a 7-year-old boy, and a blood-stained CEO. Alexandra left Emma in the waiting room with a nurse who'd volunteered to sit with her, promising to return soon. The ICU was a forest of machines, each bed curtained off for privacy, each space filled with the beeping and hissing of equipment keeping broken bodies alive. The smell of antiseptic was overwhelming, mixed with something else, something that reminded Alexandra of death, though she couldn't have said why. Dr. Chen stopped at a curtained area near the middle of the unit. Remember, she said to Noah, her voice gentle, he's going to look different, but he's alive and he's strong and he's fighting. That's what matters. She pulled back the curtain. Alexandra had thought she was prepared. She'd seen Ethan on the ground last night, seen him bleeding out on the ambulance gurney. But this was somehow worse. The clinical reality of survival. Tubes snaked into his nose, his mouth, his arms. Machines breathed for him, monitored him, kept him tethered to life. His skin was gray-pale, his chest heavily bandaged, his eyes closed despite Dr. Chen's claim that he was awake. Noah made a small, wounded sound and rushed forward. Dad? Ethan's eyes fluttered open, unfocused, glassy with pain and drugs, but open. When he saw Noah, something shifted in his expression. Not quite a smile, but close. An attempt at one. Hey, buddy, he whispered, his voice barely audible, distorted by the tubes. You, you okay? Am I okay? Noah's voice cracked. Dad, you got shot. You almost died. You can't do that. You promised you wouldn't leave me. Still here, Ethan managed. Each word clearly cost him. Still keeping my promise. You scared me, Noah said, tears streaming down his face now. You scared me so bad, Dad. I'm sorry. Ethan's hand twitched, trying to reach for his son. Mrs. Patterson guided Noah closer, helping him take his father's hand, careful of the IV lines. Had to. The little girl. I know, Mrs. Patterson told me. You saved her. You were really brave. Wasn't brave, Ethan whispered. Just necessary. Alexandra stood frozen at the foot of the bed, feeling like an intruder on this intimate moment of reunion. This was what she'd nearly destroyed, this relationship, this love, this small family that was already so fragile. If Ethan had died, Noah would have been alone. An orphan at 7. Because of her negligence, because she'd been on the phone instead of watching her daughter. As if sensing her presence, Ethan's eyes shifted, finding her in the periphery. His brow furrowed with confusion. The girl, he breathed. Emma, is she? She's fine, Alexandra said, stepping closer despite herself. She's completely fine. Not a scratch on her. Because of you. Ethan's eyes closed briefly, relief washing over his features. Good. That's good. Mr. Cole, Alexandra said, and was surprised to find her voice steady despite the tears threatening to fall. I don't have words for what you did. Thank you doesn't even begin to cover it. You saved my daughter's life and I... Her voice broke. I will spend the rest of my life trying to repay that debt. No debt, Ethan said, his words slurring slightly as the pain medication pulled at him. She's a kid. All kids deserve to be safe. But you could have died. Would have been worth it. His eyes found hers, and despite the drugs, despite the pain, there was absolute certainty in them. Noah would understand, someday, that his dad did something right. Dr. Chen stepped forward. All right, that's enough talking. Mr. Cole, you need to rest. Your body has been through significant trauma. Wait, Alexandra said urgently. Please, one more thing. She turned to Noah. Can you go get Emma? Bring her here? I think your dad should meet her properly. The girl he saved. Noah hesitated, looking between his father and Alexandra, then nodded and slipped out with Mrs. Patterson. Alone with Ethan, as alone as one could be in an ICU with a doctor present, Alexandra moved closer to his bedside. Up close, she could see the pain etched into every line of his face, the way his body trembled slightly with each breath. I meant what I said, she told him, about repaying you. I know you said there's no debt, but I'm not the kind of person who lets something like this go, so I'm going to make sure you and Noah are taken care of. Whatever you need, don't need charity, Ethan interrupted, a flash of pride breaking through the pain. Need to get back to work. Bills don't stop coming. You're not going back to stocking shelves, Alexandra said firmly. Not after this. You're going to recover fully, and then we're going to figure out something better. Lady, I don't even know your name. It's Alexandra. Alexandra Hayes. Recognition flickered in his eyes. Even half dead and pumped full of morphine, he'd heard of her. Everyone had. The CEO, he whispered. Hayes Industries. That's right. Which means I have resources. Resources I'm going to use to help you, whether you like it or not. Stubborn, Ethan observed, and this time he did manage a ghost of a smile. You have no idea. The curtain pulled back and Emma entered, holding tightly to Noah's hand. She was cleaned up now, her face scrubbed, though Alexandra hadn't found her clean clothes yet. She still wore the blood-stained pink dress, but somehow the sight of it seemed right. A badge of survival, of being worth saving. Emma approached the bed timidly, her eyes huge as she took in the man who'd saved her life. Hi, she whispered. Ethan's expression softened. Hi yourself, you're Emma? She nodded. Are you really okay? Getting there, thanks to you. Thanks to me? Emma looked confused. But you saved me. And you gave me a reason to fight. Hard to give up when there's a princess to protect. Emma giggled, a sound so bright and unexpected in this place of sickness that it seemed to shift something in the air itself. I'm not a princess. Could have fooled me. That dress is pretty fancy. It's got blood on it now. Your blood. Mommy says you're a hero. Your mommy is giving me too much credit. No, Alexandra said quietly. I'm really not. For a moment they all stood there, an unlikely constellation of people brought together by chance and choice and violence. The machines continued their steady rhythm, breathing and beeping and monitoring. Outside the curtain, the ICU hummed with the sounds of salvation and struggle. Dr. Chen cleared her throat. All right, Truly, that's enough. Mr. Cole needs rest, and you all need to let him have it. You can come back this evening, during visiting hours. As they filed out, Emma turned back one last time. Mr. Ethan, I'm going to bring you my bear, Mr. Snuffles. He's really good at making people feel better. I'd like that, Ethan said, his eyes already closing, exhaustion claiming him. Thank you, Emma. In the hallway outside the ICU, Alexandra felt something loosen in her chest, something that had been wound tight since the moment she heard the gunshot. He was alive. He was going to recover. They would have time to figure out what came next. Noah looked up at her, his expression less guarded than before. You really meant it, didn't you? About helping us? Every word. We don't have anywhere to go, he admitted, the words coming in a rush as if he'd been holding them back. Our apartment, it's in a bad building, and Mrs. Patterson says we might lose it anyway because Dad will be out of work and we can't pay rent. And I don't know what happens to kids whose dads can't take care of them, but I heard someone at school say they go to foster care, and I don't want to go to foster care. I want to stay with my dad. Stop, Alexandra said, kneeling down so she was eye level with the boy. Stop, Noah. You're not going to foster care. Your father is going to recover, and while he does, you're both going to have somewhere safe to stay. I have a guest house, separate from my main house, totally private. You and your dad can stay there as long as you need. No rent, no strings attached. Why would you do that? Mrs. Patterson asked, skepticism evident in her tone. People don't just offer up their homes to strangers. People also don't usually throw themselves in front of bullets for strangers, Alexandra countered. But Ethan did. So maybe it's time we all started doing things that don't make logical sense but are morally necessary. She looked at Noah, saw the hope and fear warring in his young face, and made a decision that she knew would change everything. When your father is released from the hospital, you're both coming home with me. And that's not charity, Noah. That's me trying to be worthy of what your father did for my daughter. Do you understand? Noah nodded slowly. What if he says no? Dad's really proud. He doesn't like taking help. Then we'll convince him together, Alexandra said, because sometimes being strong means knowing when to accept help. And your father, he's going to need time to heal. He can't do that while worrying about rent and bills and where his next meal comes from. Let me give him that gift. Let me give him peace of mind so he can focus on getting better. Mrs. Patterson studied Alexandra for a long moment, then nodded. All right, I'll talk to him, help you convince him, if it comes to that. But you should know, Ethan Cole doesn't forget kindness. You do this for him, and he'll spend the rest of his life trying to pay you back. Good, Alexandra said. Maybe we'll make each other better. They returned to the waiting room where Emma was drawing pictures with crayons a nurse had provided. She'd drawn the store, the toy aisle, herself, and a figure that was clearly Ethan, a stick figure with a cape. Look, Mommy, she said, holding up the drawing. I made Mr. Ethan into a superhero. Alexandra took the picture, her throat tight. That's beautiful, sweetheart. Should we give it to him later? Emma nodded enthusiastically. And Mr. Snuffles. I promised I'd bring him Mr. Snuffles. We'll stop home and get him, Alexandra agreed. Then to Mrs. Patterson. Can you stay with Noah? I need to take Emma home, get us both cleaned up and changed. We'll come back this evening. We'll be fine, Mrs. Patterson assured her. Go. Take care of your girl. As Alexandra and Emma walked through the hospital corridors toward the exit, Emma's small hand tucked securely in hers, Alexandra felt the magnitude of what she'd committed to settling over her like a weight. She'd invited strangers, a wounded man and his traumatized son, to live in her guest house. She'd promised to take care of them, to solve problems she didn't fully understand with resources she'd spent her entire life accumulating for entirely different purposes. Her board would have a field day. Marcus would lecture her about risk management and liability. Her lawyers would draft disclaimers and liability waivers. And she didn't care. For the first time in 20 years, Alexandra Hayes genuinely did not care what the sensible, logical, business-minded thing to do was. Because sometimes the right thing and the smart thing weren't the same thing. And sometimes you had to choose right over smart. "Mommy?" Emma asked as they settled into the back of the town car Alexandra had called. "Are Noah and Mr. Ethan going to live with us?" "For a while, yes." "Good," Emma said decisively. "I like Noah. And Mr. Ethan is nice. Even though he got shot, he was still nice to me." Alexandra pulled her daughter close, breathing in the scent of her shampoo mixed with the hospital's antiseptic smell. "He saved your life, baby. He's a very special person." "Are we special people too?" The question hung in the air between them. Were they? Alexandra had spent her life believing she was special, exceptional, remarkable, worthy of her success and her wealth and her position at the top of the corporate food chain. But what had that specialness meant when the bullets started flying? What had it been worth when Emma needed protection and Alexandra had been too distracted to provide it? "I think we're trying to be," she said finally. "And maybe that's enough. Maybe trying is where being special starts." When they arrived home, to the sprawling estate in Lincoln Park with its gates and security and carefully manicured isolation, Alexandra saw it with fresh eyes. The main house was massive, all steel and glass and modern architectural flourishes that had been featured in Architectural Digest. The guest house, tucked behind a privacy hedge, was smaller but still larger than most people's primary residences. They had so much space, so much excess. And somewhere across the city, Noah and Ethan lived in an apartment building where the heat didn't always work, and the neighbors were too loud and the rent was still somehow impossible to pay. The disparity made her sick. "Emma, go take a bath," she instructed. "I'll lay out clean clothes for you. We'll come back to the hospital after lunch." While Emma bathed, Alexandra stood in her bedroom, her sanctuary of cream silk and minimalist design, and peeled off the ruined suit. She should throw it away. Should toss it in this garbage and never think about it again. Instead, she folded it carefully and placed it in a box. A reminder. A memorial to the woman she'd been last night, before a grocery store clerk redefined everything she thought she knew about strength and sacrifice. She showered quickly, watching Ethan's blood swirl down the drain in rusty spirals. When she emerged, she didn't reach for another power suit. Instead, she pulled on jeans, designer jeans, but still, and a simple cashmere sweater. Clothes for a mother, not a mogul. Her phone had been buzzing incessantly. She'd been ignoring it, but reality had a way of demanding attention. She scrolled through the messages. 43 from Marcus, 16 from board members, dozens from reporters who'd somehow gotten wind of the story. One headline caught her eye. Billionaire CEO's daughter saved by grocery store clerk. Shooter still at large. They'd made it about her. About the billionaire and her daughter, about the dramatic rescue, about wealth and poverty colliding in a moment of violence. But the real story, the human story of sacrifice and survival, was buried under the sensationalism. She called Marcus. "Jesus Christ, Alexandra, where have you been? I've been trying to reach you for hours. The press is going insane. The board wants a statement. Tokyo is freaking out about the optics. We need to get ahead of this before—" "Marcus," she interrupted, "I need you to do something for me." "Of course. What do you need? PR consultant? Legal team? I can have them at your house in an hour." "I need you to find out everything about Ethan Cole. Not for publicity purposes. For me. I need to know what kind of medical coverage he has, what his financial situation is, whether he has any debts or obligations. And I need you to quietly take care of whatever needs taking care of. Hospital bills, lost wages, anything. But discreetly. He's proud. He won't accept charity." There was a long pause. "Alexandra, are you sure that's wise? Getting personally involved with—" "I'm already involved. He took a bullet for Emma. That makes it personal, whether it's wise or not. The board won't like it. The board can shove it up their corporate asses. Let me rephrase. I don't work for them. They work for me. Are you going to help me or not?" Another pause, then, I'll make some calls, but Alexandra, just be careful. This kind of thing, it can get complicated. It's already complicated. I'm just trying to make it right. After she hung up, Alexandra went to check on Emma. Her daughter had finished her bath and was now lying on her bed, clutching Mr. Snuffles, the one-eyed teddy bear that had been her constant companion since birth. Sweetheart, if you want to give Mr. Snuffles to Mr. Ethan, you can, but you don't have to. I know he's special to you. Emma considered this seriously. Mr. Ethan is hurt worse than I've ever been hurt. He needs Mr. Snuffles more than me, and besides, she looked up at her mother with eyes too wise for 6 years old. Maybe if I share him, Mr. Ethan will get better faster. That's how sharing works, right? Alexandra felt her heart crack open. Yes, baby, that's exactly how sharing works. That evening, they returned to the hospital armed with Mr. Snuffles, the drawing Emma had made, and a determination to make Ethan understand that accepting help wasn't weakness, it was wisdom. They found Noah and Mrs. Patterson in the waiting room, both looking exhausted but less fearful than that morning. Dr. Chen had given another update. Ethan was stable, responding well to treatment, likely to make a full recovery with time and proper care. Time and proper care. That's what Alexandra could provide. That's what she would provide, whether Ethan Cole liked it or not. 3 weeks passed in a rhythm Alexandra had never experienced before. Hospital visits bookending her days, board meetings squeezed into whatever hours remained, and Emma sleeping in her bed every night because the nightmares wouldn't stop. The girl who'd wandered fearlessly through toy aisles now woke screaming, convinced that gunmen lurked in every shadow. Alexandra held her through those dark hours, whispering reassurances she half believed herself, wondering if this was penance or privilege. Finally being the mother Emma had always needed, even if it took trauma to get her there. Ethan improved slowly. The tubes came out one by one, the machines were wheeled away, and color returned to his face like spring arriving after a brutal winter. But with physical recovery came a different kind of struggle. The weight of what came next, the reality of medical bills that made his yearly salary look like pocket change. The knowledge that Miller's Market had already replaced him with someone who could actually show up for shifts. Alexandra had tried to broach the subject of the guest house half a dozen times, and each time Ethan had deflected with the practiced skill of a man who'd spent years protecting his pride because it was the only thing poverty couldn't steal. I appreciate it, really, he'd said during her 4th attempt, his voice stronger now but still careful, as if words cost him physical effort. But Noah and I will figure something out. We always do. Ethan, you took a bullet for my daughter. Let me do this. That's exactly why I can't. I didn't save Emma so you'd owe me. I saved her because she deserved saving. Taking your charity would make it transactional, and it wasn't. It was just human. The conversation had ended there, with Alexandra frustrated and Ethan exhausted, and Noah watching them both with the calculating awareness of a child who'd learned too young that adults' words often meant less than their silences. But on the 23rd day after the shooting, everything changed. The story had been percolating in local media, a feel-good piece about heroism and gratitude, the kind of thing that filled slow news cycles. But when the Chicago Tribune ran a front-page feature with photos of Ethan in his hospital bed and Alexandra visiting with Emma, something shifted. The national outlets picked it up. Cable news ran segments. Social media exploded with hot takes about wealth inequality, with some calling Alexandra a saint for visiting her daughter's savior, and others accusing her of using Ethan's suffering for positive PR. The board of Hayes Industries called an emergency meeting. Alexandra sat in the conference room on the 47th floor of her downtown office building, surrounded by men in expensive suits who'd made fortunes by understanding that every action had a price and every relationship was leverage. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, Lake Michigan stretched gray and restless under October clouds. "This has become a distraction," said Robert Pemberton, the chairman of the board, his voice carrying the patrician certainty of old money. "The media circus, the speculation about your involvement with this man, it's affecting our stock price. Investors are concerned about your judgment." "My judgment?" Alexandra kept her voice level, professional, even as rage simmered beneath the surface. "My judgment in visiting a man who saved my daughter's life?" Your judgment in making it so public, interjected Diane Chen, whose hedge fund controlled 12% of Hayes Industries stock. The optics are problematic. A billionaire CEO becoming personally involved with a working-class man who saved her child. It reads like a PR stunt, or worse, like you're trying to assuage guilt with public charity. Neither is a good look for this company. I don't give a damn about the optics. The room went silent. Alexandra Hayes didn't curse in board meetings. She didn't lose her composure. She was the ice queen who'd turned her father's failing manufacturing concern into a tech empire worth $40 billion, and ice queens didn't crack. Except she was cracking now, fissures spreading through the carefully maintained facade. Ethan Cole nearly died protecting my daughter, she continued, her voice low and dangerous. While I was on a phone call about Tokyo deadlines that didn't matter, about contracts that will be forgotten in 5 years, he was throwing himself in front of a bullet. So forgive me if I'm not particularly concerned about stock prices or investor confidence or what plays well in the financial press. Alexandra, Robert said, his tone patronizing in the way that made her want to throw something heavy at his head. We understand you're grateful. We all are. But gratitude doesn't require you to upend your life. Write a check. Set up a trust fund for his son. Handle it through proper channels and move on. Move on, she repeated, tasting the words like poison. Just write a check and move on. Is that how you measure the value of a child's life? In dollars that can be transferred and forgotten? That's not what I meant. Then what did you mean, Robert? Because it sounds like you're telling me to put a price on Emma's life, to quantify my daughter's survival in terms that won't upset shareholders. Diane leaned forward, her expression calculating. What we're saying is that this situation has the potential to become complicated. You've been visiting him daily. The media is already speculating about the nature of your relationship. If you continue down this path, inviting him into your home as we've heard you plan to do, it will only intensify the scrutiny. On you, on this company, on all of us. And God forbid we face scrutiny for doing the right thing. The right thing, Robert scoffed, is ensuring this company remains profitable and stable. Your father built Hayes Industries from nothing, Alexandra. He trusted you to protect his legacy. Is that really what you're doing by playing savior to a grocery store clerk? The mention of her father was a calculated blow, and they all knew it. James Hayes had died when Alexandra was 26, leaving her a struggling company and a note that still lived in her desk drawer. Make me proud. She'd spent 20 years trying to honor that command, sacrificing her marriage, her youth, her relationship with her daughter on the altar of his approval. But sitting in this conference room, surrounded by people who measured human worth in stock options and market caps, she realized something fundamental. Her father would have been ashamed of her. Not for visiting Ethan, but for all the years before, for becoming so successful that she'd forgotten to be human. My father, Alexandra said quietly, built this company on innovation and integrity. He took risks when conventional wisdom said to play it safe. He hired people everyone else rejected because he saw potential where others saw only problems. And yes, he made me CEO because he believed I understood that business isn't just about profit, it's about people. So when you invoke his legacy, Robert, remember that he would have been the first one at that hospital. He would have offered his guest house without hesitation. Because he understood something you've all forgotten. We're not just stewards of capital, we're stewards of community. And right now my community includes Ethan Cole and his son. Then we have a problem, Diane said flatly, because the board has a fiduciary responsibility to the shareholders. If your personal entanglements are affecting your judgment, are you threatening to remove me? The question hung in the air like smoke. Alexandra was the largest individual shareholder, but the board could still vote to remove her as CEO if they believed she was acting against the company's interests. It would be messy, expensive, and public. It would also be entirely within their power. Robert exchanged glances with the other board members, a silent conversation happening in the space between blinks. We're asking you to choose, he said finally. Continue down this path, publicly involving yourself with Ethan Cole, inviting him into your home, making this situation even more complicated, and face the consequences. Or handle this matter privately, appropriately, and move forward as the CEO this company needs. Alexandra stood, her movements deliberate, controlled. Through the windows behind her, she could see the city stretching toward the horizon, Millions of people living their lives, struggling and surviving and sometimes saving each other in moments of grace. Then I choose him, she said. I choose Ethan. I choose being the kind of person who honors debts that can't be repaid with wire transfers. And if that costs me this position, then maybe I never deserved it in the first place. The shock on their faces would have been comical under different circumstances. Alexandra Hayes didn't make rash decisions. She calculated, analyzed, strategized. She certainly didn't choose heart over head, emotion over logic, right over profitable. But she was choosing now. This meeting is adjourned, she said. I have somewhere more important to be. She walked out of the conference room with her head high, ignoring the urgent voices calling after her. Her assistant, Marcus, intercepted her at the elevator, his face pale. Tell me you didn't just threaten to quit if they don't approve of your friendship with a man you've known for 3 weeks. I didn't threaten anything. I stated a fact. Alexandra, Jesus Christ, do you understand what you've just done? The board is going to lose their minds. They could actually vote you out. Let them try. The elevator doors opened and she stepped inside. I'm going to the hospital. Handle whatever fires need putting out. And Marcus, start preparing the guest house. Ethan's being discharged in 2 days and he's coming home with me whether he likes it or not. Marcus stared at her like she'd grown a second head. You're going to force a proud man who's already uncomfortable with accepting help to move into your guest house against his will? That's your plan? Do you have a better one? How about you let him make his own decisions about his life? Alexandra jabbed the closed door button, suddenly desperate to escape the building, the board, all the people who thought they knew better than her what she should do with her gratitude and her guilt, and her growing certainty that Ethan Cole had saved more than just Emma's life that night. I tried that, she said as the doors slid shut. He keeps making the wrong ones. The hospital had become familiar territory, the route from parking garage to ICU now automatic, the nurses greeting her by name, even the smell of antiseptic no longer quite so jarring. Alexandra found Noah in the waiting area with Mrs. Patterson, working on homework that his temporary school had sent along. Emma sat beside him, ostensibly helping but mostly just drawing more pictures of superheroes. Mommy! Emma jumped up when she saw Alexandra. Guess what? Noah taught me how to do long division. Did he now? Alexandra smiled, ruffling her daughter's hair. The nightmares were getting better, slowly. Emma could sleep through most nights now, though she still insisted on having Mr. Snuffles back. Ethan had returned the bear after a week, saying he was feeling well enough not to need teddy bear assistance anymore. She's a quick learner, Noah said, not looking up from his math worksheet. He'd warmed to Alexandra over the past weeks, but still maintained a careful distance, as if waiting for the other shoe to drop, for the charity to reveal its strings attached. How's your father today? Better. The doctor said he might get to go home soon. Noah's voice caught on the word home, and Alexandra understood why. They had no home to go to. Their apartment had been lost 2 weeks ago when Ethan couldn't make rent. Their belongings were in storage, paid for by Mrs. Patterson's Social Security check, a sacrifice the elderly woman had insisted on despite Ethan's protests. Noah, can I talk to you for a minute, privately? The boy's expression turned wary, but he stood and followed Alexandra to a quiet corner of the waiting room. Up close, she could see the exhaustion carved into his young face, the weight of worry that no 7-year-old should carry. I need your help, she said, deciding honesty was the only approach that might work. Your father won't accept my offer to stay in the guest house. He's too proud, too worried about owing me something. But Noah, he can't heal properly if he's worried about money and housing and taking care of you. He needs time to recover, and I can give him that time, but only if he agrees. So you want me to convince him? Noah's voice was flat. Use me to manipulate my dad into doing what you want? The accusation stung because it was partially true. I want you to tell him the truth, that you're scared, that you need somewhere stable to live while he heals, that it's okay to accept help sometimes. Is that manipulation, or is it just honesty? Noah studied her with eyes too old for his face. Why do you care so much? I know you're grateful and everything, but this is more than that. You're fighting with your company over us. Mrs. Patterson showed me the articles. Why? Alexandra sank into a nearby chair, suddenly exhausted. Do you really want to know? Yeah, I do. Because I was a terrible mother, she said simply. For 6 years, I put work before Emma. I missed bedtimes and birthdays. I was on my phone while she wandered around a grocery store at 11 at night, alone and vulnerable. And your father, a man who was barely scraping by, who had every reason to be focused on his own survival, he saw my daughter in danger and didn't hesitate. He was more of a parent to her in 5 seconds than I'd been in 6 years. And that broke something in me. Or maybe it fixed something. I'm still figuring out which. Noah was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was softer. Dad would say you're being too hard on yourself. Your dad nearly died because I wasn't hard enough on myself. No. Dad nearly died because bad people exist and good people try to stop them. That's what he told me anyway. He said the worst thing we could do is let the bad people make us afraid to be good. Alexandra felt tears prick her eyes. Your father is a wise man. He's stubborn, is what he is. But okay, I'll talk to him. I'll tell him I need this. Because I do. I'm tired of being scared all the time. I want to feel safe again. Thank you, Noah. The boy hesitated, then added quietly, Emma really likes you, you know. She talks about you all the time when we're doing homework. About how you let her sleep in your bed now, how you make her breakfast, how you're different than you used to be. I think maybe the shooting broke something in you. But maybe it's okay to be broken if it means you can be fixed better than you were before. Out of the mouths of babes, Alexandra thought, watching Noah return to his homework. Children saw truth that adults spent lifetimes avoiding. She found Ethan sitting up in bed, no longer connected to machines, looking almost human again despite the pallor and the careful way he moved, protecting his healing chest. He was reading a book Noah had brought him, something about history, the pages worn from library circulation. Alexandra, he said, setting the book aside, I didn't expect you this early. Don't you have a company to run? I just walked out of a board meeting where they essentially asked me to choose between my position and you. Ethan's face went pale. Tell me you didn't choose me. I chose doing the right thing, which, yes, involved defending my decision to help you. Alexandra, for God's sake. He tried to sit up straighter and winced, pain flashing across his face. You can't throw away your career for someone you barely know. That's insane. Is it? Because from where I'm standing, the only insane thing is the idea that we're supposed to assign monetary value to human life and act accordingly. You saved Emma. That's not a debt I can repay with a check and a handshake. So you'll sacrifice your company instead. Your livelihood? Everything your father built? Ethan's voice rose, frustration evident. I didn't take that bullet so you could destroy your life out of misplaced guilt. This isn't guilt, Alexandra shot back. Or if it is, it's the kind of guilt that comes from finally seeing clearly. Do you know what I was doing when you got shot, Ethan? I was on the phone arguing about a contract deadline that ultimately didn't matter. While my 6-year-old daughter wandered around a store unsupervised at 11 p.m., I was prioritizing business. And you were just stocking shelves, trying to survive another day. But when it mattered, when someone needed saving, you knew what to do. You didn't calculate the cost or weigh the risks. You just acted, and that's worth more than every dollar in my bank account. That's easy to say when you have dollars in your bank account, Ethan said bitterly. You want to know what I was thinking when I threw myself in front of that bullet? I was thinking that if I died, at least Noah would be taken care of. There's a life insurance policy through the store. Not much, but enough to get him through to adulthood with Mrs. Patterson. I wasn't being noble, Alexandra. I was being practical. That little girl's life was worth more than mine, mathematically. She had money, opportunity, a future. I had debt and exhaustion and no way forward. So yeah, I took the bullet. But don't make me into some kind of saint. I'm just a guy who did the math and realized my death had more value than my survival. The words hung in the air like a confession, ugly and honest and devastating. Alexandra felt her throat tighten. That's the saddest thing I've ever heard, she whispered. That's poverty, Ethan corrected. That's what it does to you. Makes you calculate the worth of your own life against your son's future and realize you're worth more dead than alive. And that's exactly why you're coming home with me. Because you're wrong, Ethan. You're worth so much more than you think. To Noah, to Emma, to... She stopped herself before saying to me, unsure when that had become true, but certain that it was. You're worth fighting for, so fight with me. Accept the help. Heal properly. Give yourself time to figure out what comes next without the constant terror of bills and eviction and survival. Please. You don't understand. Then help me understand. Explain to me why accepting help is worse than suffering needlessly. Explain to me why pride is more important than your son's stability. Because right now, Ethan, all I see is a man who's so afraid of owing someone something that he'd rather struggle forever than accept a hand up. Because hands up turn into hands around your throat. The outburst surprised them both. Ethan slumped back against his pillows, exhausted by the emotion. Every time I've accepted help, it's come with strings. My father-in-law paid for Rebecca's cancer treatment and spent the rest of her life holding it over my head, reminding me I wasn't good enough for his daughter. The church gave us food when I couldn't afford groceries and made me attend their services, made Noah pray with them, turned charity into obligation. Social services offered assistance and investigated me like a criminal, made me prove I deserved to keep my own son. So forgive me if I'm suspicious of generosity. In my experience, nothing is free. There's always a cost, and I'm tired of paying it. Alexandra sat down in the chair beside his bed, her anger deflating into something softer, sadder. I'm sorry that's been your experience. I'm sorry people twisted kindness into control. But Ethan, I'm not those people. I'm not looking for leverage or gratitude or anything except the chance to help someone who helped me when it mattered most. The guest house is separate from my main house. You'll have complete privacy. No strings, no expectations, no hidden costs. Just time. Time to heal, time to figure things out, time to be with your son without worrying about survival. And when I can't pay you back? When the scales never balance? Then they don't balance. Life isn't a ledger, Ethan. Not every debt can be repaid, not every kindness can be returned. Sometimes you just accept that you needed help, and someone provided it, and you move forward. Easy for you to say. You're right. It is easy for me to say because I've never been where you are. I've never had to choose between food and rent, never had to calculate the value of my own life in terms of insurance policies. But that doesn't make me wrong. It just makes me lucky. And maybe part of being lucky is using that luck to help people who deserve better than what they've gotten. Before Ethan could respond, Noah appeared in the doorway, his expression determined. Dad, I need to talk to you. Ethan's face softened instantly. Of course, buddy. What's up? Noah walked to his father's bedside, his small hands twisting together nervously. I heard you and Mrs. Hayes arguing about the guest house. Noah, you shouldn't. Dad, please, just listen. The boy took a deep breath. I'm scared. I'm scared all the time now. I'm scared you're going to die, scared we won't have anywhere to live, scared I'll have to leave you and go to foster care. And I know you want to be strong and independent and not owe anyone anything. But Dad, I don't care about that. I just want to feel safe again. I want to wake up without being scared. And if Mrs. Hayes is offering us a place to stay, a real place, not a shelter or someone's couch, then why can't we just say yes? Why does pride matter more than me feeling safe? The devastation on Ethan's face was absolute. Noah, buddy, nothing matters more than you feeling safe. Nothing. Then say yes. Please. Let her help us. Alexandra watched the struggle play out across Ethan's features, pride warring with love, independence fighting with necessity. She saw the moment pride lost, the instant when Ethan Cole realized that his son's peace of mind was worth more than his own dignity. Okay, he said quietly, his eyes never leaving Noah's face. Okay, we'll accept Mrs. Hayes' offer, but only until I can find work. Until I can afford our own place again. This is temporary, Noah. Do you understand? We're not charity cases. We're just borrowing kindness until we can stand on our own again. Noah threw his arms around his father, carefully, mindful of healing wounds, and buried his face in Ethan's shoulder. Thank you, Dad. Thank you. Over Noah's head, Ethan met Alexandra's gaze. There was resignation there, and gratitude, and something else, a question, perhaps, or a warning. As if he was saying, I'm trusting you, don't make me regret it. Alexandra nodded, understanding the weight of what she'd taken on. This wasn't just about providing housing. It was about proving that kindness could exist without strings, that help didn't have to come with hidden costs, that sometimes people gave simply because it was right to give. No pressure. 2 days later, Alexandra stood in the hospital lobby with Emma, watching as Ethan was wheeled toward the exit in a mandatory wheelchair despite his protests. Noah walked beside him, carrying a small duffel bag containing the few possessions they'd salvaged: some clothes, Noah's school books, a photo album of Rebecca that Ethan wouldn't leave behind. "Ready?" Alexandra asked. Ethan looked up at her, and for the first time since the shooting, she saw something other than pain or stubbornness in his expression. She saw hope, tentative and fragile, but real. "As I'll ever be," he said. They loaded into Alexandra's town car, too fancy, too expensive, too much like charity. But Ethan didn't complain. Noah and Emma chattered in the back seat, their friendship cementing in the way children's friendships did, fast and fierce and uncomplicated by adult anxieties. As they drove through Chicago toward Lincoln Park, toward the estate that would be their temporary home, Alexandra felt the magnitude of what she'd set in motion. She'd walked away from a board meeting. She'd potentially jeopardized her position as CEO. She'd invited strangers into her home, into her life, into Emma's daily routine. She'd done everything the old Alexandra Hayes would have called reckless and irresponsible and emotionally driven. And she'd never been more certain of anything in her life. The guest house looked different now than it had when she'd first shown it to Mrs. Patterson and Noah a week ago to get their approval. Alexandra had hired people to make it feel less like a luxury rental and more like a home. Furniture that was comfortable rather than just expensive, toys for Noah, books, and art supplies, a fully stocked kitchen. Not charity, she'd told herself as she oversaw the preparations, just hospitality. When they pulled up, Ethan stared at the guest house. 2 stories of tasteful architecture, probably larger than anywhere he'd ever lived, and his face went carefully neutral. "It's too much," he said quietly. "It's what I have," Alexandra countered. "And right now, what I have is yours. No arguments." She helped him from the car, acutely aware of how careful he had to be, how much pain each movement still cost him. They made their way slowly up the path to the front door, Noah racing ahead with Emma to explore, their excited voices echoing back. Dad, there's a game room with a pool table and everything. And my room has a window seat. I can see the whole garden." Ethan paused in the doorway, taking in the open-plan living space with its comfortable furniture and warm lighting, so different from the sterile hospital or the cramped apartment they'd lost. His hand gripped the doorframe like an anchor. "I don't know how to do this," he admitted, his voice barely audible. "I don't know how to accept this much without feeling like I'm losing myself." Alexandra understood. She'd spent years building walls around her heart, protecting herself from vulnerability, and those walls had nearly cost her everything that mattered. Ethan's walls were different, built from necessity rather than choice, from survival rather than ambition, but they were walls nonetheless. "Then we'll figure it out together," she said. "No expectations, no timelines, just time. Time to heal and breathe and remember what it feels like to not be in crisis mode." Ethan looked at her then, really looked at her, and Alexandra felt something shift between them, a recognition, perhaps, of shared damage and tentative hope for repair. "Why are you doing this?" he asked. "And don't say it's because I saved Emma. This is more than that. I don't understand it." Alexandra didn't fully understand it either, but standing in the doorway of the guest house with Ethan Cole, listening to their children laugh together somewhere inside, she knew the answer even if she couldn't articulate it yet. "Because you reminded me what matters," she said simply. "And because maybe saving someone isn't a one-time thing. Maybe it's something we keep doing for each other, over and over, until we're both whole." Before Ethan could respond, Noah and Emma came barreling back, grabbing their hands and pulling them inside to see everything, to explore this new temporary home that felt already less temporary than it should. And as Alexandra crossed the threshold, following the sound of children's laughter and Ethan's hesitant steps, she realized she'd crossed another threshold too. From the woman who measured worth in dollars to the woman who understood that some things couldn't be quantified, only honored. Outside, dark clouds had been gathering all afternoon. As the first drops of rain began to fall, washing the city clean, Alexandra closed the door on the past 3 weeks and opened it on whatever came next. The rain that started the day Ethan moved in didn't stop for 3 days, turning the garden into a watercolor painting and the sky into something perpetually gray. Alexandra found herself grateful for the weather. It gave them all an excuse to stay inside, to settle in without the pressure of going anywhere or doing anything beyond simply existing in the same space. Ethan spent most of those first days sleeping, his body finally able to rest without the constant interruptions of hospital routines. Alexandra checked on him more often than was probably necessary, finding excuses to bring tea or extra pillows or books she thought he might like. Each time he'd look at her with that same mixture of gratitude and wariness, as if waiting for the bill to arrive, for the real cost of her generosity to be revealed. It never came. On the 4th morning, Alexandra woke to sunlight streaming through her bedroom windows and the sound of children's laughter from the garden. She found Emma and Noah outside, jumping in puddles in their rain boots, their clothes already soaked through. Ethan sat on the guest house porch in a rocking chair Alexandra had bought specifically for him, a blanket wrapped around his shoulders despite the mild temperature. He was watching his son play with an expression of such profound relief that it made Alexandra's chest ache. "You're going to let them catch pneumonia," she called out, approaching with 2 cups of coffee. Ethan accepted one with a nod of thanks. "Noah's been cooped up too long. Kid needs to be a kid sometimes, even if it means muddy clothes and sniffles." Alexandra settled into the chair beside his, watching Emma splash through a particularly deep puddle with abandon. When was the last time she'd let her daughter play like this? Unscheduled, unsupervised, allowed to get dirty without immediate correction. Before Rebecca's death, probably. Before the weight of running a company had consumed every spare moment. "Thank you," Ethan said quietly, "for all of this. I know I fought you on it, but watching Noah smile again, it's worth swallowing my pride." "There's no pride to swallow. You're helping me as much as I'm helping you." "How do you figure that?" Alexandra gestured toward Emma, who was now teaching Noah how to make a proper splash by running and jumping rather than just stepping. "She's been different since you came. Lighter. The nightmares are almost gone. She talks about Noah constantly, what they're going to play next, what she wants to teach him. For the first time since the shooting, she's not scared. Because you're here, alive and healing, proof that the bad thing didn't win." Ethan absorbed this, his hands wrapped around the coffee cup for warmth. "Still doesn't feel equal. You've given us a home. I've given you, what, permission for your daughter to splash in puddles?" "You've given me a chance to be better," Alexandra said simply. "Better than I was. Better than I might have been." Before Ethan could respond, a sleek black car pulled up to the main house. Marcus emerged, briefcase in hand, his expression that particular blend of exasperation and loyalty that had characterized their working relationship for 15 years. "That's my assistant," Alexandra explained, standing. "We've been working remotely, but some things require face-to-face conversation. Will you be okay here?" "I think I can manage watching kids play without supervision," Ethan said dryly, but there was warmth in his eyes. "Go, handle your business. We'll still be here when you're done." Alexandra walked back to the main house with Marcus, acutely aware of the physical distance between where her life had been and where it was now. The main house felt cavernous and cold compared to the lived-in warmth of the guest house, even after just 4 days. "The board scheduled another meeting," Marcus said without preamble as they entered her study. "They want answers about your intentions regarding Ethan Cole. Robert's been making calls, building support for a vote of no confidence. Let him." "Alexandra, you can't just—" Marcus stopped, studying her face. "You've changed." "Have I?" 3 months ago, you would have already strategized a response. You would have called each board member individually, shored up your alliances, prepared a presentation proving that your personal life had no impact on your professional performance. Now you're just, what? Going to let them vote you out? Alexandra moved to the window, looking out at the garden where Emma and Noah continued their game, where Ethan watched with the careful attention of a parent relearning how to relax. "You know what I realized, Marcus? My father's note, 'Make me proud.' I've been interpreting it wrong for 20 years. I thought he meant build the company, increase profits, become successful by every measurable metric. But maybe he just meant be someone worth being proud of. Be decent, be kind, Be human. That's a beautiful sentiment. It's also potentially career suicide. Then maybe I need a different career. The words surprised her as much as they clearly surprised Marcus, but once spoken, they felt right. What's the point of success if it requires me to be someone I hate? Someone who ignores her daughter, who measures human worth in dollar signs, who would let a good man and his son struggle rather than face media scrutiny. Marcus sat heavily in one of the leather chairs, looking suddenly older than his 45 years. You're serious about this? I think I might be. So what's the plan? You resign, liquidate your shares, become a full-time philanthropist? Because I have to tell you, the board would probably love that. They could install Robert as CEO, undo all your initiatives, take the company in a more traditional direction. He made air quotes around the word, his distaste evident. The thought should have filled Alexandra with rage, with determination to fight. Instead, she felt something closer to peace. Maybe that's not my problem anymore. Maybe I spent so long protecting my father's legacy that I forgot to build my own. Jesus, who are you, and what have you done with Alexandra Hayes? She took a bullet, Alexandra said softly. Not literally, but close enough. And sometimes when you nearly lose everything, you realize what actually matters. They spent the next hour going through necessary business, contracts that needed signing, decisions that couldn't wait, the logistics of potentially transitioning power if the board voted her out. It was surreal, planning for the end of everything she'd built and feeling relief rather than devastation. When Marcus finally left, promising to handle what he could and keep her informed about the board's maneuvering, Alexandra didn't return to the garden immediately. Instead, she went to her bedroom and retrieved the box from her closet, the one containing the blood-stained suit from the night of the shooting. She'd kept it as a reminder, a memorial to the woman she'd been. Maybe it was time to let that woman go. She carried the box downstairs and out to the fire pit in the garden. Emma and Noah, now thoroughly muddy and happy, gathered around curiously as she built a fire. Ethan joined them, moving slowly but steadily, his healing progressing day by day. "What are you burning?" Emma asked. Alexandra held up the jacket, the bloodstains visible even from a distance. "The past. Who I used to be before your friend Mr. Ethan reminded me who I wanted to be." "That's dramatic," Ethan observed, but there was no judgment in his tone, only curiosity. "I'm a dramatic person." Alexandra fed the jacket to the flames, watching the expensive fabric catch and curl. "I spent 20 years building a version of myself that looked successful from the outside but felt empty inside." That woman wouldn't have been at Miller's Market that night. She would have sent her assistant to pick up whatever Emma needed. She wouldn't have been close enough to see what happened, wouldn't have seen you save my daughter, wouldn't have learned what real courage looks like. "You're giving me too much credit again. And you're not giving yourself enough." The pants went next, then the shirt. Emma and Noah watched the fire with the solemn attention children gave to important moments they didn't fully understand but knew mattered. "I don't want to be that woman anymore. The one who measures everything in profits and losses, who puts work before people, who's so afraid of appearing weak that she forgets how to be strong in ways that actually matter." Ethan was quiet for a long moment, watching the flames consume the last of the suit. When he spoke, his voice was thoughtful. "You know what I've been thinking about? Before the shooting, I was just surviving, working myself to death for barely enough to keep the lights on, telling myself that was enough, that survival was the best I could hope for. But lying in that hospital bed, wondering if I'd make it, I realized I didn't want just survival anymore. I wanted life, real life, with purpose and meaning and maybe even joy. Problem is, I have no idea how to get from survival to life. The gap seems impossible." "Maybe we figure it out together," Alexandra said. "I don't know how to stop being a CEO who builds walls. You don't know how to stop being a survivor who expects the worst. But maybe between the two of us, we can learn something better." "That's a nice thought," Ethan said carefully. "But eventually this has to end, right? The guest house, the helping, all of it. I can't stay here forever and you can't put your life on hold indefinitely. At some point, we both have to return to reality." "Who says this isn't reality?" Alexandra challenged. "Who says this temporary arrangement is less real than whatever came before? Maybe this is exactly as real as we decide to make it." Noah, who'd been uncharacteristically quiet, suddenly spoke up. I like it here. Emma's my best friend now, and her mom makes really good pancakes. And you seem happy, Dad. Like, actually happy instead of pretending happy. Can't we just stay? The naked hope in the boy's voice was devastating. Ethan's face crumpled slightly before he composed himself. Noah, buddy, it's more complicated than that. Mrs. Hayes has her own life, which I'm reconsidering, Alexandra interrupted, significantly. 3 faces turned toward her, 2 children confused, 1 adult carefully neutral. Alexandra took a breath, knowing she was about to cross another line, burn another bridge to her old life. The board is probably going to vote me out as CEO, and I'm realizing I don't care. What I do care about is being the kind of person Emma can be proud of. The kind of person who doesn't just write checks to charity, but actually shows up. And right now, showing up means this. You here, healing, Noah feeling safe, Emma learning that the world isn't just scary, that sometimes good things happen too. So what? You're going to give up running a billion-dollar company to play house with us? Ethan's tone was sharper than he probably intended. That's not sustainable, Alexandra. Eventually, you'll resent us for costing you everything you built. Eventually, the novelty will wear off, and you'll realize we're just a burden you took on out of guilt. Is that what you think this is? Guilt? Isn't it? Alexandra looked at him, really looked at this man who'd thrown himself in front of a bullet, who'd calculated the value of his own life and found it wanting, who'd accepted her help despite every instinct screaming against it. She saw the fear beneath his skepticism, the terror that this precarious happiness would be yanked away, leaving him and Noah more broken than before. It started as guilt, she admitted, gratitude and guilt all mixed together. But Ethan, it's been 4 days and I already can't imagine this house without you in it. Without Noah teaching Emma how to properly jump in puddles. Without you sitting on that porch watching your son play like it's the most important thing in the world. Which it is. And maybe that's what I've been missing, the understanding that the most important things are actually the smallest ones, the daily ones, the human ones. Pretty words, Ethan said, but his voice had lost its edge. But words are easy. Living them is harder. Then we'll do the hard thing, together. Emma tugged at her mother's sleeve. Mommy, are Noah and Mr. Ethan going to live here forever? I don't know, sweetheart, but they're going to live here as long as they need to, and as long as we all want them to. Is that okay with you? Yes! Emma threw her arms around Noah. We can be like a real family. The word hung in the air, family, too big and too soon, and yet somehow exactly right. Alexandra saw Ethan flinch slightly, saw the wall come back up, the protective instinct to reject before being rejected. But she also saw something else. A flicker of longing, quickly suppressed but there nonetheless. The desire for exactly what Emma had named, family, belonging, a place to call home that went beyond temporary refuge. Over the next 3 weeks, an unusual rhythm developed. Alexandra worked from home more than she ever had, taking meetings on her laptop from the main house, but spending increasing amounts of time in the guest house, where the 4 of them would share meals and conversation. The children were inseparable, their laughter a constant soundtrack. Ethan grew stronger daily, graduating from the porch rocker to walks around the garden, then to helping with small tasks despite Alexandra's protests that he should rest. I'm not an invalid, he'd say, folding laundry or helping Noah with homework or prepping vegetables for dinner. Sitting around feeling useless isn't helping me heal. The board meeting was scheduled for a Tuesday in early November. Alexandra woke that morning with a strange calm, dressed in jeans and a cashmere sweater rather than her usual armor of designer suits. She found Ethan in the guest house kitchen, attempting to make breakfast one-handed while protecting his still-healing chest. Let me, she said, taking the spatula from him. I can manage pancakes. I know you can, but I want to do this. Humor me. They worked in companionable silence, Alexandra at the stove, Ethan setting the table, the children still asleep upstairs. The domesticity of it struck her as both foreign and familiar, like remembering a language she'd once spoken fluently. Big day today, Ethan observed. The board meeting. How did you know? Marcus has been calling more frequently. You've been distracted, even when you're pretending not to be. And you made a comment last night about changes coming. He poured 2 cups of coffee, sliding one across the counter to her. They're going to vote you out, aren't they? Probably. And you're okay with that? Alexandra flipped a pancake, considering. I think so. It's terrifying and liberating in equal measure. I've been Alexandra Hayes, CEO, for so long that I don't really know who Alexandra Hayes, private citizen, is, but I'd like to find out. What will you do after? I don't know, figure out what makes me happy beyond quarterly earnings reports. Spend time with Emma, maybe. She hesitated, then decided to risk honesty. Maybe figure out what this is. This thing we're building here, the 4 of us. Ethan was quiet for a long moment. You know it scares me, right? This thing you're talking about. Because I want it so badly that it physically hurts. But I've learned not to trust wanting. Every time I've let myself want something, a stable home, enough money to breathe, a future for Noah that didn't involve struggle, it's been taken away. So forgive me if I'm hesitant to believe this is real. It's real, Alexandra said softly. Maybe it's messy and unconventional and nothing like what either of us planned, but it's real, Ethan. For now. But what happens when your board ousts you and the media goes crazy, and the scrutiny becomes too much? What happens when you realize that playing house with the grocery store clerk isn't as fulfilling as running an empire? I was never playing. She turned to face him fully, abandoning the pancakes. And you're not the grocery store clerk. You're the man who saved my daughter, who showed me what courage looks like, who's teaching me that there are different kinds of strength beyond the boardroom variety. You're Ethan, and Noah's father, and someone I respect more than anyone I've met in 20 years of business. So please stop diminishing yourself. Force of habit. Then develop better habits. Footsteps thundered on the stairs. Emma and Noah, drawn by the smell of pancakes and the promise of breakfast. The serious conversation dissolved into morning chaos, with sticky syrup and laughter and arguments about whether chocolate chips constituted a legitimate breakfast food. They do, Emma insisted. They absolutely don't, Ethan countered, but he was smiling, and when Noah asked for chocolate chip pancakes too, he looked at Alexandra with mock surrender. Your house, your rules. Chocolate chips it is, Alexandra declared, earning cheers from the children. Later, as she prepared to leave for the board meeting, Alexandra found Noah sitting on the front steps of the guest house, looking pensive. Hey, buddy, what's wrong? Are you going to come back? He asked without preamble. After your meeting? Because Dad says sometimes when people go to important meetings, they don't come back the same. They remember they have important things to do and people they used to be, and they stop wanting the small stuff. Alexandra sat beside him, her heart breaking at the casual way he spoke of abandonment, as if it were inevitable rather than tragic. I'm coming back. And Noah, I'm always going to come back. Because you and your dad and Emma, you're not small stuff. You're everything that matters. You promise? I promise. Okay. He leaned against her shoulder, a gesture of trust that felt monumental. I believe you. The board meeting was held in the same conference room where she'd walked out weeks ago, but the energy was different now. Robert Pemberton sat at the head of the table like he'd already won, which he probably had. The other board members avoided her eyes, a mix of guilt and relief that someone else was handling the unpleasant business of removing her. Alexandra, thank you for joining us, Robert began, his tone falsely cordial. I trust you know why we're here. You're going to vote me out as CEO. Yes, I'm aware. We feel it's in the best interest of the company. Your recent personal entanglements have created uncertainty. The media attention, the distraction from core business. Robert, Alexandra interrupted calmly. You don't need to justify it. I understand. You want someone more focused, less complicated, more willing to prioritize profits over people. That's fair. That's your prerogative as a board. Then you won't fight this? No, but I will say something first. She stood, moving to the window overlooking the city. My father built this company on innovation and integrity. He believed business could be a force for good, that success and values weren't mutually exclusive. Somewhere along the way, I forgot that. I forgot that the point of having resources is using them to make things better. for employees, for communities, for people who need help. I forgot that being successful means nothing if you're successful at the cost of your humanity. That's very poetic, Diane Chen interjected. But it doesn't change the fact that you've become a liability. You're right, I have become a liability to a version of this company that I no longer believe in. So I'm not going to fight your vote. Instead, I'm resigning, effective immediately. And I'm divesting my shares, not selling them to you, Robert, though I know that's what you're hoping for. I'm putting them in a trust that will fund a new initiative, support services for working families in crisis, housing assistance, medical bill relief, job training, childcare, all the things that people like Ethan Cole needed and couldn't access because our society equates struggling with failing. The room erupted in objections, but Alexandra held up a hand. I'm not finished. I'm also establishing a foundation that will hire people like Ethan, veterans, single parents, anyone who's been written off by a system that only values people when they're already successful. They'll work on community safety programs, crisis intervention, the kind of street-level help that actually makes a difference. You can't just, Robert sputtered. Your shares are worth billions. You're throwing away your entire fortune on some misguided charity project? Not throwing away, investing in people instead of profits, in long-term community health instead of quarterly earnings, in the kind of legacy my father would have actually been proud of. She moved toward the door, feeling lighter with each step. You can have Hayes Industries. Turn it into whatever soulless corporate machine you want. I don't care anymore. I have better things to do with my time. Like what? Diane called after her. Playing savior to some man you barely know? Alexandra paused at the door, looking back at the people she'd spent years trying to impress, trying to prove herself to. They looked smaller now, diminished by their own cynicism. Like being a mother. Like building something that matters. Like proving that the best response to violence isn't more fear, but more love. You might not understand that, and that's fine. You don't have to. Because I'm not doing it for you anymore. I'm doing it for me, and for Emma, and for Ethan, and Noah, and for everyone else who's been told they don't matter by people who measure worth in dollar signs. She left before they could respond, taking the elevator down 47 floors and walking out of the building that had defined her identity for 20 years. Her phone buzzed immediately. Marcus, probably panicking about what she'd just done. She'd call him later, explain everything, make sure he knew he could stay with Hayes Industries or join her new venture, whatever he preferred. Right now, she just wanted to go home. The drive back to Lincoln Park felt like crossing a border between countries, leaving behind the steel and glass towers of commerce for tree-lined streets and the promise of warmth. When she pulled up to the estate, she found all three of them waiting on the guest house porch. Ethan in his rocking chair, Emma and Noah on either side, like a reception committee. How did it go? Ethan called as she approached. I quit, or resigned, or possibly burned every professional bridge I've ever built. She climbed the porch steps, grinning despite the magnitude of what she'd just done. Turns out setting your entire life on fire is incredibly liberating. You quit? Ethan stood, wincing slightly. Alexandra, you can't just quit a Fortune 500 company because I wanted to? Because staying meant becoming someone I hated? Because I'd rather build something new with people I care about than maintain something old that makes me miserable? She reached out, taking his hand before she could overthink it. I'm done explaining myself to people who don't understand. The question is, do you understand? Do you get why I'd walk away from all of it? Ethan looked at their joined hands, then at the children watching with barely contained excitement, then back at Alexandra. I'm starting to. Good. Because I just committed several $1 billion to helping people like you. People the system has failed. And I'm going to need someone who actually understands what that means, who's lived through it, to help me not screw it up. Think you might be interested in a job? You're offering me a job? I'm offering you a partnership. In building something that matters. In creating the kind of support system you needed but didn't have. In making sure that when another Ethan Cole faces an impossible choice, there's actually help available. She squeezed his hand. You don't have to decide now. But think about it. Think about turning what happened to you, all the struggle and survival, into something that helps other people avoid the same fate. That's a big responsibility. Yeah, well, apparently I'm good at taking on big responsibilities I'm not entirely qualified for. She gestured to the four of them, this makeshift family that shouldn't work but somehow did. Exhibit A. Emma tugged at her mother's sleeve. Mommy, does this mean you're going to be home more? Like, really home, not just working from home? Yes, sweetheart, really home. And we can have pancakes for breakfast every day. Within reason. And Noah can stay forever? Alexandra looked at Ethan, saw the hope and fear warring in his expression, the way he held himself ready for disappointment even as he dared to want something more. That's up to Mr. Ethan and Noah, she said carefully. But I hope so. I really hope so. The rain returned that evening, softer than before, a gentle percussion against the windows. They made dinner together, all four of them crowding the guest house kitchen, making far too much pasta and laughing when Noah accidentally dumped an entire container of oregano into the sauce. Ethan attempted to salvage it. Emma declared it Italian adventure pasta, and somehow it was perfect despite being objectively terrible. After the children went to bed, Ethan and Alexandra sat on the porch again, watching the rain, comfortable in the silence that had developed between them. I'm scared, Ethan admitted, that this is too good, that I'll wake up and it'll be gone, that you'll realize you made a mistake burning down your life for someone you barely know. We've been over this. You're not someone I barely know, not anymore. 3 weeks, Alexandra. We've known each other 3 weeks. That's not enough time to make life-altering decisions. I made a life-altering decision in 5 seconds, the moment I saw you fall. Everything since has just been honoring that choice. She turned to face him. You saved Emma. That changed everything. Not just for her, but for me. You showed me what I'd been missing while I was busy building empires. Purpose. Connection. The kind of courage that doesn't come from boardrooms, but from deciding that someone else's life matters more than your own comfort. And what happens when the novelty wears off? When you get tired of pasta disasters and muddy clothes and all the small inconveniences of sharing space with other people? Then I'll deal with it. Just like you'll deal with whatever challenges come from living here, from working with me, from letting yourself trust that this is real. Alexandra reached out, resting her hand on his arm. We're both scared, Ethan. The difference is, I'm choosing to be scared and hopeful instead of just scared. I'm choosing to believe that we can build something good from something terrible. Will you choose that too? Ethan was quiet for so long that Alexandra thought he might say no, might pull away and insist on the temporary nature of their arrangement, but finally he turned his hand over, palm up, and let her fingers intertwine with his. Okay, he whispered. Okay, I'll try. I'll try to believe this is real, that we can build something, that I'm allowed to want this. Good, because I want it too. All of it. The complications and the chaos and the possibility that we might actually figure out how to be happy. They sat like that as the rain fell. Two broken people learning to trust in repair, in redemption, in the strange alchemy that turned tragedy into transformation. Inside, their children slept peacefully, dreaming of adventures yet to come. And for the first time in longer than either could remember, the future felt less like a threat and more like a promise. Winter arrived early that year, covering Chicago in a blanket of white that transformed the estate into something from a snow globe. Alexandra stood at the main house window, watching Emma and Noah build a lopsided snowman in the garden, while Ethan supervised from a respectful distance, still protective of his healing ribs. 6 months had passed since the shooting, and the world had shifted in ways both profound and subtle. The foundation was real now, not just a dramatic declaration made in anger, but an actual organization with offices, staff, and a mission statement that Ethan had helped write. They'd named it Second Chances, and in the 5 months since its launch, they'd helped 43 families avoid eviction, paid medical bills for 67 people in crisis, and created a job training program that had already placed 19 formerly homeless veterans in stable employment. But it was the trial that brought them all back to Miller's Market, back to where everything had started and nearly ended. The call came on a Tuesday morning in early December. Detective Sarah Morrison, who'd been handling the case since the beginning, needed them to come downtown. They'd caught the second shooter, the tall, jittery one who'd fled while his partner stood frozen over Ethan's bleeding body. The first shooter had taken a plea deal months ago, was already serving 15 years. But the second one wanted his day in court, wanted to argue that he'd never fired a weapon, that he was less culpable than his partner. Which means we need you to testify, Detective Morrison said, her voice apologetic. Both of you, if possible. The prosecution wants to establish the full trauma of what happened, and having the victim and the witness tell their stories in their own words, it matters to a jury. Alexandra had expected Ethan to resist, to say he wanted to put it behind him, to argue that reliving the worst night of his life served no purpose. Instead, he'd simply nodded and said, "Whatever helps put him away. Whatever keeps other people safe." The courthouse was a brutalist concrete structure downtown, all harsh angles and fluorescent lighting. They arrived together, Alexandra, Ethan, Emma, and Noah, with Mrs. Patterson along to watch the children during the actual testimony. The media had gotten wind of the trial, and cameras lined the courthouse steps like predators waiting for prey. "Mr. Cole! Mr. Cole, how does it feel to face your shooter? Ms. Hayes, are you here to support Mr. Cole? Is it true you're living together? What's the nature of your relationship?" Ethan's jaw tightened at the questions, but Alexandra took his hand, not hiding, not ashamed, just present. The speculation about their relationship had been constant, unavoidable. Were they together romantically? Was it just gratitude? Were they building a family or playing house? The media couldn't decide, and truthfully, neither could they sometimes. What they had defied easy categorization, existing in some space between friendship and something more, between gratitude and genuine affection. "No comment," Ethan said firmly, guiding their small group through the crowd. Inside, the prosecutor met them, a woman in her 50s named Janet Reeves, who'd built her career on putting violent offenders behind bars. She had kind eyes, but a spine of steel, and she'd been preparing them for weeks about what to expect. "The defense is going to try to make this about impulse, about fear, about their client being influenced by his partner," she explained, her voice low. "They'll paint him as a victim of circumstance. Our job is to remind the jury that he made choices, to enter that store, to draw a weapon, to threaten innocent people." "Your testimony is crucial to establishing that." "I understand," Ethan said. "I'm ready." But watching him in the witness box an hour later, Alexandra wasn't sure ready was the right word. Brave, perhaps. Determined. But not ready, because how could anyone be ready to relive the moment they nearly died? "Mr. Cole," Janet Reeves began gently, "can you walk us through what happened on the night of October 7th? Ethan took a breath, his hands gripping the rail of the witness box. From where Alexandra sat in the gallery, she could see the tremor in his fingers, the careful control he was exerting over his emotions. "I was working my shift at Miller's Market, stocking shelves. It was late, almost closing time. I noticed two men come in. They were acting strange, nervous. Then one of them pulled out a gun." "And what did you do when you saw the gun?" "At first, nothing. I was frozen. You think you'll react one way in a crisis, but when it's actually happening, your brain just stops." He paused, gathering himself. "Then I heard a child crying. I looked over and saw a little girl, Emma, standing near the toy aisle. One of the gunmen was advancing toward her, his weapon raised. Her mother was running toward her but wasn't close enough, and I knew someone had to do something." "So you intervened?" "I ran. I put myself between the gun and the child. I didn't think about it, didn't plan it. I just moved." "And then what happened?" Ethan's face went pale, and Alexandra saw him return to that moment, saw him living it again behind his eyes. "He shot me. The impact, it felt like being hit by a car. I remember falling, remember the pain, remember thinking, at least she's safe. Then everything went dark." The courtroom was silent, except for the scratch of the court reporter's fingers on her stenotype machine. Janet Reeves let the silence sit for a moment, let the jury absorb the horror of what Ethan had just described. "And the defendant," she pointed to the tall man sitting at the defense table, looking smaller now than he had in his hoodie that night. "Where was he during this?" "He was the other one, the one who didn't shoot but had his gun pointed at the other customers. He was yelling, threatening, making sure no one tried to stop them." "So while his partner shot you, the defendant was actively ensuring that no one could intervene to help you?" "Objection," the defense attorney jumped up. "Leading the witness." "Sustained. Rephrase, Ms. Reeves. What was the defendant doing while you were being shot, Mr. Cole?" He was controlling the other people in the store, making sure they couldn't help, making sure the robbery could continue even after his partner shot me. The testimony continued for another hour, brutal, detailed, necessary. When it was finally over, Ethan looked hollowed out, exhausted by reliving his trauma for public consumption. He practically collapsed into the chair beside Alexandra in the gallery, and she took his hand without thinking about the cameras or the speculation or anything except the fact that he needed grounding. "You did great," she whispered. "I feel like I'm going to throw up." "That's normal. Janet said the first day is always the hardest." "There's more?" "I testify tomorrow. Then the medical examiner, the police, the other witnesses, it'll be over soon." But soon felt like forever when you were living through it. That night, back at the estate, Ethan couldn't settle. He paced the guest house, made tea he didn't drink, tried to read and gave up after rereading the same page 5 times. Alexandra found him at midnight sitting on the porch despite the freezing temperature, staring at nothing. "You'll freeze to death out here," she said, wrapping a blanket around his shoulders and settling beside him. Couldn't sleep, kept seeing it, the gun, the look on Emma's face, the blood, my blood. It's like testifying ripped open something I'd been trying to heal. "I'm sorry. If I'd known it would be this hard." "No!" He cut her off. "It needed to happen. That man needs to face consequences. And maybe I need to face what happened instead of pretending I'm fine." "I'm not fine, Alexandra. Some days I wake up and I can't breathe because I'm convinced it's happening again. Some nights I dream about the bullet and wake up certain I'm dying. I've been trying to hold it together because you've been so good to us, because I don't want you to think you made a mistake letting us stay. But the truth is, I'm barely holding on." The confession hung between them, raw and honest. Alexandra felt her heart crack for him, for the weight he'd been carrying alone because he thought he had to be strong, had to be grateful, had to be anything except broken. "You don't have to hold it together for me," she said softly. "You can fall apart. You can be angry and scared and traumatized. You took a bullet, Ethan. You nearly died. You're allowed to not be okay. But you've done so much for us, given us so much. How can I repay that by falling apart in your guest house? By letting me help, by trusting that this isn't transactional, that you don't owe me perpetual gratitude or perfect composure. You saved my daughter, and I'm trying to help you heal, not because I expect something in return, but because you matter. You and Noah matter so much, and I can't stand watching you pretend everything's fine when it clearly isn't." Ethan's face crumpled, years of held-back emotion finally breaking through. "I don't know how to not be okay. I've been the strong one for so long, for Rebecca when she was dying, for Noah after she was gone. If I let myself fall apart, what happens to him? What happens to us?" "We catch you," Alexandra said simply. "Me and Emma and Mrs. Patterson and everyone at Second Chances who thinks you're a hero. We catch you, and we hold you up until you're strong enough to stand again. That's what community means. That's what family means." "Family," Ethan repeated, and there was such longing in the word. "Is that what we are?" Alexandra considered the question carefully. What were they, really? Not quite friends, though friendship was there. Not quite lovers, though the potential simmered beneath every conversation. Not quite a traditional family, but something that mattered just as much. "I think we're becoming one," she said finally, "in our own strange way. It's messy and unconventional, and probably not what either of us would have chosen if we'd been given options. But Ethan, I can't imagine my life without you in it anymore. Without Noah teaching Emma how to be brave, without you challenging me to be better than I was. So yes, I think we're family, if you want to be." "I want to be," he whispered. "God help me, I want this to be real so badly it terrifies me." "Then let it be real. Let yourself have this. You've spent so long surviving that you've forgotten you're allowed to live." They sat in the freezing December night, wrapped in blankets and tentative hope, while inside the houses their children slept peacefully, dreaming of snowmen and Christmas and the security of knowing the adults in their lives would keep them safe. Alexandra's testimony the next day was easier and harder than Ethan's. Easier because she hadn't been shot, hadn't physically suffered. Harder because she had to admit, under oath, in front of cameras and jury and the man whose actions had nearly killed Ethan, that she'd been a neglectful mother, that she'd been on her phone instead of watching her daughter, that Emma had been in danger because Alexandra had prioritized work over parenthood. "So you're saying," the defense attorney pounced, "that this entire incident could have been avoided if you'd been supervising your child properly?" "Objection!" Janet Reeves shot to her feet. "The witness's parenting has no bearing on the defendant's choice to commit armed robbery. Your Honor, I'm establishing that the victim, Mr. Cole, inserted himself into a situation that involved armed criminals threatening a child," the judge interrupted sharply. "Move on, counselor." But the damage was done. The implication hung in the air that this was somehow Alexandra's fault, that her negligence had created the circumstances that led to Ethan being shot. She saw the defense attorney's strategy: make the jury blame her instead of the defendant, turn victim heroism into reckless intervention. "Ms. Hayes," Janet Reeves said on redirect, her voice calm but firm, "in your opinion, who is responsible for Mr. Cole being shot?" "The man who pulled the trigger," Alexandra said clearly, "and his accomplice, who created the conditions that allowed it to happen. I was a distracted parent that night. I own that. But they were armed criminals threatening innocent people. The fault is theirs, not mine, and certainly not Ethan's." The trial lasted 3 more days. Medical testimony about Ethan's injuries, police testimony about the defendant's criminal history, character witnesses arguing he'd fallen in with the wrong crowd. The jury deliberated for 6 hours before returning a verdict: guilty on all counts. Armed robbery, assault with a deadly weapon, felony murder for his partner's actions. The judge sentenced him to 25 years. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed again, but this time Ethan didn't stay silent. He stepped up to the microphone cluster with Alexandra beside him, their children flanking them, a united front. "I want to say something," Ethan began, his voice steady despite the cameras. 6 months ago, 2 men made a choice to walk into a store with guns and threaten innocent people. That choice nearly killed me. It traumatized children. It changed lives forever. Today, justice was served. But justice isn't just about punishment. It's about making sure this doesn't happen again. That's why I'm partnering with Second Chances Foundation to create intervention programs for at-risk youth, job training for people who might otherwise turn to crime, and support services for families in crisis. Because the best way to honor what happened is to prevent it from happening to someone else. Mr. Cole, there's been a lot of speculation about your relationship with Ms. Hayes. Can you clarify? "We're family," Ethan said simply, and Alexandra felt her heart skip. "We're building something together. A foundation, a home, a future. That's all anyone needs to know." He took Alexandra's hand, took Noah's hand, and together their little unit walked away from the cameras, from the courthouse, from the last remnants of that terrible October night. Christmas came wrapped in snow and slowly healing hearts. Alexandra had wanted to make it special, the first real holiday for their makeshift family, the first Christmas where Emma might actually remember her mother being present instead of working. She went overboard, probably, filling the main house and guest house with decorations, buying too many presents, planning elaborate meals. "You're stress decorating," Ethan observed, watching her hang the 7th wreath. "We don't need this much Christmas." "Yes, we do. We need excessive, over-the-top, ridiculously festive Christmas. We need joy and magic and all the things we nearly lost." He didn't argue after that, just helped her hang lights and pretended not to notice when she got misty-eyed over ornaments. On Christmas Eve, they gathered in the main house living room, all 4 of them, plus Mrs. Patterson, who'd become an honorary grandmother to both children. Emma and Noah sat by the tree in matching pajamas that Alexandra had bought, their faces glowing with excitement. Ethan had relaxed into the evening, his usual wariness softened by eggnog and the warmth of belonging. "Can we open one present tonight?" Emma asked, a question that had become tradition in some families. Alexandra looked at Ethan, who shrugged. "One each?" The children tore into their selected gifts with abandon. Emma received a set of art supplies. Noah got a book about space exploration. But the real gift came when Noah pulled out a small wrapped box from behind the tree and handed it to his father. "We made this together," he said shyly, glancing at Emma. Emma helped. Ethan unwrapped it carefully, his hands shaking slightly. Inside was a photo album, handmade, with construction paper covers decorated with drawings and stickers. The first page held a photo from Miller's Market that someone had taken right after the ambulance left, showing the children's drawings that had been left at the scene. Flowers and hearts and childish well-wishes. The subsequent pages documented the past 6 months. Ethan in his hospital bed, the guest house on moving day, family dinners, Halloween costumes, Noah and Emma building their snowman. The final page held 2 photos side by side. On the left, a picture of Ethan and Noah from before Rebecca's death, young, happy, whole. On the right, a recent photo of all 4 of them taken by Mrs. Patterson just last week. Beneath it, in Emma's careful printing, were the words, "Our family, new but real." Ethan stared at the album for a long moment, his throat working. When he finally looked up, tears tracked down his face unashamedly. "Thank you," he managed. Thank you." "Do you like it?" Noah asked anxiously. "Emma said you'd like it, but I wasn't sure. I love it." Ethan pulled his son into a fierce hug. "I love it, and I love you, and I love—" He stopped, his eyes finding Alexandra across the room. The moment stretched between them, loaded with everything unsaid, everything they'd been building toward but hadn't quite named. Alexandra felt her pulse quicken, felt Emma's small hand slip into hers, felt the weight of possibility pressing down like snow. "I love what we've built here," Ethan finished carefully. "All of us. Together." It wasn't quite a declaration, but it was close enough. Alexandra smiled, squeezing Emma's hand. "We love it too. All of it." Later, after the children were asleep and Mrs. Patterson had returned to her apartment with promises to return for Christmas breakfast, Ethan found Alexandra on the porch of the guest house, their usual spot, where so many conversations had happened. "It's been exactly 6 months," he said, settling into the rocking chair beside her. 6 months since I woke up in that hospital and saw you holding Emma, looking at me like you'd witnessed a miracle. You were a miracle. You still are. I've been thinking about what you asked me back in November, about choosing to be scared and hopeful instead of just scared, about believing this is real. And I've decided to stop waiting for the other shoe to drop, to stop expecting this to end. Because Alexandra, even if it did end tomorrow, even if some catastrophe struck and ripped all this away, these 6 months have been worth it. You've given me and Noah something I thought we'd lost forever, a home. Not just a place to live, but a home. With people who care about us, who want us there, who've made space in their lives for us. You've given us the same thing, Alexandra said softly. Emma was so lost before you came. We both were. We had a house, but not a home. Had each other, but didn't really know each other. You showed me how to be present, how to prioritize what actually matters. That's not a small gift, Ethan. So, where do we go from here? It was the question they'd been dancing around for months. The elephant in the room at every family dinner, every shared moment, every time their hands brushed and lingered a second too long. I think, Alexandra said carefully, we keep doing what we're doing. We keep building second chances, keep raising our kids together, keep figuring out this strange, wonderful thing we've created. And maybe, she paused, gathering courage, maybe we stop calling it temporary. Maybe we acknowledge that the guest house is your home now, not just a place you're staying, that Noah and Emma are siblings in all the ways that matter, that we're in love, Ethan supplied, his voice barely above a whisper. The words hung in the frigid air, crystallizing like snowflakes. Alexandra felt her breath catch, felt the full weight of what he'd just said, not asked, but stated. A truth he'd been carrying alone. Are we? She asked, though she already knew the answer, had known it for weeks if she was honest with herself. I am, Ethan admitted. I've been trying not to be, trying to maintain appropriate boundaries, trying to remember that you're my benefactor and I'm your charity case and we should keep things professional. But Alexandra Professional went out the window about 3 months ago, maybe sooner, and I'm tired of pretending I don't feel what I feel, which is that you're the bravest person I've ever met, that watching you walk away from everything you built to create something better made me fall for you harder than I've fallen for anyone since Rebecca, that the thought of you meeting someone else, of having to watch you date while I live in your guest house, it makes me want to leave just so I don't have to witness it. But I won't leave because Noah loves it here. Because Emma needs us, Because I'm selfish enough to want whatever pieces of you I can have, even if they're just friendship. Alexandra's heart was pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. What if they're not just friendship? What if I've been falling for you too, slowly and terrifyingly, and I've been too scared to say anything because what if it ruins what we have? What if we try for more and it doesn't work, and suddenly the kids lose this family we've built? Or, Ethan countered, what if it does work? What if we're already most of the way there and we're just too scared to acknowledge it? We share meals, raise our kids together, know each other's routines and habits and fears. We're everything a couple is except for the actual commitment. Maybe it's time to stop being scared. I'm terrified, Alexandra admitted. Of messing this up, of losing you, of hurting the kids if this goes wrong. I'm terrified too, but I'm more terrified of looking back in 5 years and realizing we were too scared to try, that we settled for half of what we could have had. Alexandra stood, her legs shaky, and moved to stand in front of Ethan's chair. She reached out, cupping his face in her hands, feeling the rough stubble, the warmth of his skin, the reality of him. I love you, she said, the words both terrifying and liberating. I love your stubborn pride and your fierce protectiveness of Noah and the way you challenge me to be better. I love that you see me, not the CEO or the billionaire or the woman in the magazines, but me, the person underneath all that. And I love the family we've built, the home we've created, the possibility of what we could be together. Ethan's hands came up to cover hers, his eyes bright with emotion. So what do we do about it? We try. We take a chance. We stop living in the guest house and move into the main house. All of us, together. We tell the kids we're a real family now, officially. We build second chances together as partners in every sense. She took a breath. We get married, eventually, when we're both ready. We make this permanent instead of temporary. You're proposing a proposal? Ethan asked, his lips quirking into a smile. I'm proposing a future. The details we can figure out as we go. That's very romantic. I'm new to romance. Cut me some slack. Ethan laughed, a real laugh, full and unguarded, and pulled her down into his lap, careful of his still sensitive ribs. For the record, yes. Yes to all of it. Yes to moving into the main house. Yes to being a real family. Yes to building a life together. Yes to you, Alexandra Hayes, for as long as you'll have me. She kissed him then, finally bridging the gap they'd been maintaining for months. It was gentle at first, tentative, but deepened into something more, promise and passion and the bone-deep rightness of two people who'd found each other against impossible odds. When they finally pulled apart, both breathless, Ethan rested his forehead against hers. We should probably discuss this with the kids. Make sure they're on board. They'll be thrilled. They've been asking when you're moving into the big house for months. Perceptive little monsters. They're your kids now, too. Of course they're perceptive. The smile that spread across Ethan's face was like sunrise, slow, inevitable, beautiful. My kids. Plural. I like the sound of that. They told Emma and Noah on Christmas morning, after presents were opened and breakfast was consumed and the excitement had mellowed into contentment. Both children reacted exactly as predicted, with whoops of joy and questions about bedroom arrangements and insistence that they'd known all along. Finally, Emma declared dramatically, we've been waiting forever for you grown-ups to figure it out. You're 7, Alexandra protested, old enough to know when people are in love but too scared to admit it. Ethan laughed, pulling Noah onto his lap. What do you think, buddy? Is this okay with you? Is it okay that we get to stay forever and you're going to marry Emma's mom and we're going to be real brothers and sisters? Yeah, Dad. It's very okay. They moved into the main house on New Year's Day, a symbolic fresh start, a commitment to the future they'd chosen. The guest house became Ethan's office for second chances work, and the main house, once so cold and empty, filled with the chaos of family life. Toys scattered across previously pristine floors, children's artwork covered the refrigerator, noise and laughter echoed through rooms that had been silent for too long. It was messy and imperfect and absolutely perfect. 3 months later, on a mild day in March, Alexandra and Ethan returned to Miller's Market for the first time since the shooting. The store had reopened after a month of repairs, the bullet hole patched, the blood cleaned, the physical evidence of violence erased. But Mr. Miller, the owner, had created a small memorial on one wall. Photos from that night, articles about Ethan's heroism, and a simple plaque that read, "Proof that people are still good." They stood before it hand in hand, their children on either side, a united front. "Do you regret it?" Alexandra asked quietly. "Taking the bullet? All the pain and recovery and trauma? If you could go back, would you make a different choice?" Ethan looked at Emma, at this little girl who'd been worth dying for and who'd inadvertently given him a reason to truly live. He looked at Noah, happier and more secure than he'd been in years. He looked at Alexandra, the woman who'd taken a crisis and transformed it into grace. "Not for a second," he said, "because that bullet didn't just save Emma. It saved me too. From a life of just surviving, from believing I was worth less than I was, from thinking I was alone. That bullet brought me to you, to this family, to a life worth living instead of just enduring. So no, I don't regret it. I'd take that bullet again and again if it meant ending up here." Mr. Miller approached them, his weathered face breaking into a smile. "Ethan Cole, good to see you standing, son." "Good to be standing, Mr. Miller. I heard what you've been doing, that foundation, helping folks who need it. Your wife mentioned it." "Fiancé," Ethan corrected, squeezing Alexandra's hand. They'd gotten officially engaged on Valentine's Day with a ring Ethan had saved for months to buy, despite Alexandra's protests that she didn't need jewelry. "But yes, Second Chances has been keeping us busy." "Well, I'm proud of you, both of you, turning something terrible into something good. That's the kind of story the world needs more of." As they left the store, stepping out into spring sunshine, Emma tugged at Ethan's sleeve. "Mr. Ethan, Dad." She still wasn't quite used to calling him that, though Ethan insisted she could. "Are we going home now?" "Yes, sweetheart, we're going home." Home. Not the estate or the main house, or Alexandra's place. Just home. The simple, profound truth of belonging. That evening, as rain, softer now, gentler, tapped against the windows, the four of them gathered in the living room. Emma and Noah worked on a puzzle together, their heads bent close in concentration. Alexandra sat on the couch with her laptop, reviewing grant applications for Second Chances. Ethan was beside her, close enough that their shoulders touched, reading Noah a new book that he'd later adapt into the bedtime story both children would demand. It was ordinary. It was mundane. It was everything they'd fought for and bled for, and chosen despite every logical reason to walk away. Later, after the children were asleep, Ethan found the photo album they'd given him at Christmas and added new pictures, the New Year's Day movie, their engagement, the visit to Miller's Market. On the final page, he wrote in his careful handwriting, "We began with a bullet and built a family, proof that love can grow from the darkest places, proof that we're all worth saving, proof that sometimes the best things in life come from the moments we're most afraid we won't survive." Alexandra read it over his shoulder, her arms wrapping around him from behind. "That's beautiful." "It's true. 6 months ago, I was a man who'd given up on anything beyond survival. Now I'm getting married to the most remarkable woman I've ever met, raising 2 incredible kids, running a foundation that actually helps people. If you told me that night in the hospital this is where I'd end up, I'd have thought you were crazy." "Are you happy?" Alexandra asked, though she could see the answer in everything about him, the relaxation in his shoulders, the light in his eyes, the easy smile that had replaced his usual wariness. "I'm happy," he confirmed. "Terrified sometimes, still processing trauma most days, figuring out how to be a father to 2 kids instead of 1. But underneath all that, yeah, I'm happy. For the first time since Rebecca died, I'm genuinely happy." "Good. Because you deserve it. You deserve all of this and more." They sat together as the rain fell, as their children dreamed peacefully upstairs, as the house they'd built together, not of wood and glass, but of trust and choice and love, settled around them like a blessing. Outside, Chicago glittered under spring rain. Inside, a family slept. Not the family any of them had planned for, not the family that made sense on paper, but the family they'd chosen, brick by painful brick, to build from the ruins of violence. Ethan traced the scar on his chest, that permanent reminder of the night that changed everything. It no longer hurt, not physically, but sometimes he'd touch it and remember, the gunshot, the fall, the certainty that he was dying. And then he'd remember what came after, the hospital, the recovery, the slow building of something he hadn't dared to dream was possible. Alexandra noticed, covering his hand with hers over the scar. "Thank you," she whispered, "for being inevitable, for saving Emma, for showing me what courage really looks like, for building this with me. Thank you for catching me when I fell, for not letting me disappear, for insisting I was worth saving even when I didn't believe it." They didn't need to say more. Some truths existed beyond words, living in the spaces between heartbeats, in the choice to stay when leaving would be easier, in the courage to build something beautiful from something broken. And as the rain washed the city clean and a new season began, 4 people who'd been strangers 6 months ago slept under one roof, dreaming of ordinary tomorrows and extraordinary love, proof that even the darkest moments could give birth to grace. They'd started with a bullet and built a family. And that family, messy and unconventional and absolutely real, was finally, irrevocably, home.